Uchiha Madara was a vicious man. He always get what he wants one way or another. Of course, that concept doesn't apply on his multiple dances with Shinju Hashirama, but well, that's the only exception. So, right now, he has his mind set on the perfect plan to bring peace to the world. To have his little brother back, Izuna, Tsuki no Mi Kikaku. For years since his last dance with his former best friend and rival, he's been planning everything step for step, piece by piece. Just like Shogi. The last piece before he dies is preparing a young Uchiha who almost died during a mission, but Zetsu rescued him just in time. The teen will replace him for the time being and will install fear in the world by using the name Uchiha Madara and impersonate said person. And then, at the right time, he'll be back to take everything and bring peace to the world. Just a few more years. That though got him into a rare moment of good mood that even made him smile. And was at this moment that a Kobunai captain appeared out of nowhere kneeling in his office. Report. Kobunai is a special ANBU division designed to continuously gather information about the other villages, Kage and infamous missing nin, in case of war or assassination. They are extremely skilled, though they are relatively unknown since this unit is designed to work in the shadows so no one knows of their existence, answering only to the Mizukage. In a monotone voice, the captain replied, Mizukage-sama, mission accomplished. Kumobikure has declares war on Awagakure and Kanahagakure. This is the scroll containing vital information about their military power. That cracked for a second time today a smile, which was noticed by the person in front of him who had a shocked look, but thanked the mask for covering it. Of course, everyone would be shocked since no one has ever seen the Mizukage smile. Hell, no one has ever seen his eyes. A voice interrupted the captain's thoughts. Very good. I've checked your file and noticed that you have an outstanding record. I'm pleased with your results, so as a reward I'll accept your petition to quit the Kobunai division and become a full-fledged jounin. Congratulations, you may take of your mask, Phoenix, and come back tomorrow for your mission assignment, as your real name, Nyla Terumi. The captain was shocked. She didn't know what to say. Who could blame her? Not only had she seen the Mizu fucking Kage smiling, but praise her as well, and accepting an actual request to leave one of the most important rank in the village. Fuck, today was her day. No one will believe her. Not that I have many friends though. That last thought made her inwardly sigh in sadness. Nonetheless, she saluted her leader. Thank you very much, Mizukage-sama. You don't know how much that means to me. As she was talking, she took her mask, finally revealing her face. She has brilliant green eyes and ankle-length auburn hair styled into a herringbone pattern at the back, a top knot tied with a dark red band, and with a short bang covering her right eye. She wore the standard attire of the Kirigakure ninja, which included a gray flak jacket, metal arm guards and gloves, ninja sandals with spikes for traveling into mountainous regions, 3 ninja pouches on their back waist, over it a black cloak, a tanto strapped on his back, and the famous phoenix mask symbolizing the leader position. Madara's breath actually hitched for a second as he took the sight of her eyes and marvelous face before returning to the normal, though there was a slight pink dust on his cheeks, as the former captain placed the mask on his desk, giving him a nice view of her beautiful curves, which annoyed him since he didn't know what to think about this weird feeling. Nyla Terumi, who was standing in front of the Mizukage watching him as he hasn't moved for a while, not even a twitch for several seconds. She decided to break him out his thoughts. Heir. Is that everything? Broken out his stupor, he blurted, which almost made him, the Uchiha Madara, faint of embarrassment, you've a beautiful hair. That was the last straw after everything she saw and heard from the Mizukage in less than 30 minutes, as her face turned into a full-blown red color and everything went black. A sweat drop was his only reaction as he stands up from his sit, popping some bones during the progress. Walking towards the woman, he picked her up bridal style, laying her on the couch and sitting beside her, absently running a hand through her hair, immediately stopping as she gave a content sigh. The ghost Uchiha sat there beside her, just thinking what the hell was he doing and thinking. Is this what they call love? No, it must be a misunderstanding. I can't fall in love. I'm the embodiment of hate and darkness. Right? As he gave an exhausted sigh, a melodic voice froze him. Oh, you're quite cute yourself, aren't you? Though I don't understand why you hide your face under that hat, followed by a giggle, cuddling into the warm feeling she was getting. Get off, woman, in a harsh tone. But she noticed the small affection as well. Madara stands up, moving towards his desk, but for the second time froze just as a pair of arms encircled his waist. "Please, don't leave me." Those words made his heart skip a beat as he was reminded of a memory that during the years he completely forgot or disregarded. Flashback. A 24 years old Uchiha Izuna is lying on a bed crying tears of blood, taking note of the growing hatred on Madara's heart. "Please, don't leave me, Izuna. I'm going to kill those damn Senju bastards." Darkness. He only saw darkness as hatred kept consuming him. As he was planning millions of ways to dismember every single member of the tree huggers, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Stop right now, Madara and I. I'm giving you my eyes so that I can see through you. From now on, I'll be your light. I'm not giving up on you to the curse of hatred that is plaguing the clan for years. Surpass it. One day you'll find a girl. Don't make that face and trust my words. One day you'll find a girl and maybe have a child with her. Would you like that your own son or daughter was like those other fools of our clan, full of hatred, power-hungry, and weak? Wouldn't it be amazing if you could live and raise him, teach everything you know? You'll be like his idol, a role model. Wouldn't you like to teach your child on how to dance, Madara?" Shock. His little brother's words shook him to the very core and made him rethink on everything, every single plan he had. A small smile spread on Izuna as he watched Madara's emotions clashing, and at that moment he knew that not everything was lost, and so he let himself pass to the afterlife. Though as Madara's Iron no Mangekyo Sharingan imprint the dull and lifeless eyes of his little brother in his memory, he would forget Izuna's words for a very long time. Flashback end. 70 years later, Madara's eyes softened and moisture on the sides of his eyes could be seen emerging. Too much time. Been so long since he had felt this peaceful. He could have sworn he heard the winds whisper welcome back, and Isan. All it took was this woman. Just how? He is 98 years old now, but with his best friend's cells, his body is still as good as one of 50. Maybe he still could. Best friend, huh? Hashibaka, I'm back. Finally, a tear slipped past his cheek, wetting the former Zenbu arms that were still encircling Madara's weight. Nailia Terumi didn't know why her Mizukage was crying, but she knew one thing as she moved in front of him and looking deep in those charcoal-moistured eyes. Those eyes were from someone who lived enough and suffered for 3 lifetimes put together. He has lived through so much pain. It's almost unbearable. She also noticed how he was so much alike with someone, but she couldn't put a finger on it. Oh well, she can ask later. They spent almost 20 minutes just hugging each other. One of the Zetsus that was in the room, just in case, had activated the seals implanted around the room to silence it. Hopefully no one breaks the moment, or he knew that Madara would use Kensitai Susanoo, even if that person was a genin. 25 minutes later, they separated from each other, both feeling quite disappointed at the lack of warmth. Sitting on the couch, Nyla locks eyes with the black-haired man. "Who are you?" One of the co-founders of Konohagakure no Sato, rival to Senju Hashirama, who was later renowned as the Shinobi no Kami, the Uchiha no Borii. "I am Uchiha Madara." Bluntly with a proud tone, then smugness, and finishing with an arrogance tone, taking off his Kaguya hat, his charcoal eyes giving form to a brilliant pair of red eyes with 3 tomos spinning widely, gazing over the captivating green eyes, hitting him over the head despite the initial shock that she was in the front of a legend. Scrap that, legend of the legends, and the fact that he should be a crippled man, but he's looking like he's on his late 40s with her being 38, though she loved her figure, not that she would say it out loud. Her difficult life, living in the shadow of his father Saito Terumi, Yenbyu commander, always made her feel insecure of herself. She always has to be extreme careful because everyone knew who her father was, so they tried to use her to get to him. Unforgivable. Her normally cold attitude became even more icy despite her Yotan Kekiai Genkai. So she joined Kubunai unit, who under normal circumstances only answers to the Mizukage, departing herself even more from her peers, not that they would care. "So Madara-kun, tell me about you." Everything started at the Shimatsu no Tani, Valley of the End. Time skip, 16 years later. Uchiha Madara, 108, with Hashirama's cells, and with help of Zetsu, he made his body rejuvenate looking like one of 66, and Terumi Nyla, hit right at the bat. It was like they were meant to be together. They both told each other their darkest secrets, though that was mostly Madara, who was sent flying into a wall, almost going through it thanks by a fist empowered by chakra, which got an raised eyebrow since he heard a Senju using that type of style. Not bad, he mused to himself. Their history was also shared, both giving apologetic looks to each other. On the first year, they were secretly a couple, though they spent many hours together, either making out, sparring, or arguing. Needless to say, the last one was quite a habit for them. She explained the origins of the Terumi Ikizoku, which was a branch clan of the Uzumaki, which surprised him if the raised eyebrow was any indication. That was why her chakra was very dense, and actually large, though not at Madara's level. She told him about her Yotan and Futten Kekiai Genkais. Even though Madara already knew from her files, it was still very interesting. Nonetheless, he heard her girlfriend rant about her awesomeness. On the third month, Konoha was declared the winner of the Daisanji Ninkai Taisen. Fools, all of them, was during the 7th month that he bluntly asked or demanded, depends on the perspective, I want a child, which in his head was the same as do you want to have a child, love? Yup, totally the same. His lucky was that his girlfriend already knew what he meant, so, with a jump of joy, she shouted a melodic yes, before she ravaged him right in the office after activating all the seals there was. On the second year, Nyla was officially pregnant, much to the joy of the couple, though it was not through sex alone, because apparently, he couldn't produce sperm out of his organ, so through Zetsu they had extracted the still pure and healthy sperm that were deep in his testicles and injected in Nyla's womb. Even Madara had shed a tear. In case of a boy, he wanted to give him his little brother's name Izuna, but he quickly put that thought to the side because he knew his brother wouldn't want that, and he didn't want that his child to think he was just a replacement. On the third year, Madara could tell he had never felt so much happiness in his life like on that day his son, yes son, was born. His mind was already running through toward training schedules, but her lover put immediately a stop onto those thoughts, saying that their son was not to be trained for 4 years or else. Right after he grunted with his famous HN plus annoying woman, Madara was sent flying crashing face first on the wall. Again. So they agreed by the name of Naruto because they knew that their little maelstrom would shake the world. He would use Terumi, his mother clan, for now that is. During the same year, the Uchiha went to his hideout where a Zetsu who was impersonating himself before he transplanted the Hashirama cells, so it came to no surprise when he saw the long white hair and wrinkles all over his face, which made him kind of annoyed. Flashback. He had entered the place during the night where most likely Uchiha Obito, the young Uchiha he rescued, was sleeping, and he was. From Zetsu's reports, the 14-year-old boy had become quite strong in fact, but with what he was going about to do would take him basically 80 or 90% of his powers. Oh well, at least he will have his physical prowess that is a lot better since when he started. The only problem was going to be the white Zetsu that was attached to him. Hopefully that Senju is currently in Konoha, or else the young Uchiha is going to die. Not that he cares. The only thing that matters to him is his family. Zetsu, after I'm finished, take him back to Konoha without you being seen. I had reports saying that the village was celebrating their Hokage's newborn, so it won't be too difficult. His ever-loyal servant replied, yes, Madara-sama. Yondaime Hokage Namikaze Minato and the Kyubi Jinchuriki Uzumaki Kushina had a son named Minma. As Madara stepped towards Obito, charging chakra on his left eye, slowly he opened Obito's eyelid so he was looking to the Mizukage. Locking his eye in no Mangekyo Sharingan with the youngest Uchiha eye, he answered the white creature. HN, couldn't care less. This will take a toll on my body. Call Black Zetsu to take me home. Me no Hondan. Kyoku Jokyo. As he said that, his Mangekyo Sharingan began to spin widely for 3 consecutive minutes before stopping. He gazed over white Zetsu, giving a small nod, which was everything he needed to understand the situation before the Uchiha was supported by Black Zetsu, and took their leave back home. His memories were removed. Take him home. Flashback end. During the time that he was recovering, he took his precious time to think, and finally decided that he would pass the mantle of Mizukage to a man called Yagura Karatachi. He was definitely skilled, and he was only 19. But what made him choose specifically Yagura was because of what he had inside. Sanbai no Kaide game. He was originally going to be his pet, as both Yagura and the beast were a piece of what was Madara's favorite puzzle, but after everything that happened, he doesn't care anymore. He's just a good boy and loyal to him. After writing everything in the scroll so that when he died, his successor would take place immediately. He made sure also to write off a few recommendations, such as abolishing the barbaric ritual that takes place in the academy for a few years already, so the other nations won't call Kirigakure the Chijiri no Sato or the Bloody Village. He didn't have time to stop it, nor did he care. It was only his wife that reminded him, or he would get slammed on some random wall. And he would like that his child could grow up safely and learn everything during his studies. Since he was never one for books like his wife, he still harbors the take the army head on and destroy them mentality. That always makes my blood pump. Everything was done and perfectly timed. The Sandame's Mizukage death wasn't something that gave people neither good or bad vibes, since no one knew what was under the hat. With his so-called death, he can be with his wife, and especially his son. He had only 7 months, and was already moving his eyes like checking his surroundings if there was any hostile intentions. Maybe I'm a little paranoid. Or maybe it's because of that idiotic white Zetsu. On the 7th year, Naruto's 4th birthday was a day that would be in their memory. Not even Madara held so much pride before, and that was saying much. Unlocking Naruto's chakra. Now that was something else. They were large, just as his own at his age, and dense like that of his mother. He was proud. They gave birth to a monster. His potential was huge, and the elder Uchiha would make sure to explore everything of it to make sure the little Temuri could take on his legacy and his enemies. With the time he still had left in this world. Yes, the ghost knew he was dying. His body was starting to reject Hashirama's cells. Proof of that was his now visible gray hair, several wrinkles, and the loss of his physical prowess. I still have around 10 years if nothing happens. That's around the academy graduation time. He will be 14 by the time. Izuna been right all this time? He's probably rolling in his grave and laugh just because I gave him reason, but at least I managed to find my peace. And he was right, because right now Izuna was laughing his ass off in heavens. For the rest of this and next year, Naruto got to improve his chakra control since his reserves were huge. He was very smart for his age. They took notice of that. A fine trait he got from Nyla, but he showed interest in flashy jutsus that cracked an arrogant smirk on Madara's face. That's my son, all right. Was during the 8th year that Madara gave Naruto one of the best wishes he could ask for. Flashback. Temuri compound. Father and son were in the clearing of the compound nearby a sizable lake made by a Suiton jutsu. No one knew of that little spot, though Madara made sure of that by implanting Jinjutsu and silent seals all over the place. Temuri Ikazoku had a medium-sized compound. There were not too many shinobis. Many of them didn't want to go to the academy since its bad reputation was still known and fresh, and so they opted to not walk on G-Dark Path, and many stayed as civilian. Even though there were still some strong ninjas, mainly their head, Saito Temuri, Nyla's father. With the help of Nyla's prowess in Fuinjutsu, coupled with Madara's fine ocular Jinjutsu, they were able to put an undetectable hinge over him. They didn't want to take any chances, both eyeing each other with their arms folded over their chest. Supporting an impassive look, the elder finally said, Naruto-kun, since you know your origins, and undoubtedly you've Uchiha blood running strongly in your veins, I'm going to teach you a jutsu that is known as the rite of passage if you want to be finally acknowledged as an Uchiha. I'm not going on details. I want you to be capable enough of solving and surpass obstacles on your own, since I'm not going to be here for you when the time comes. Added the last part as though. The little 5-year-old child remained impassive, though there was a slight raised eyebrow at the sad tone in the end, but thought nothing of it. Naruto was a fair-skinned boy with spiky, black hair that had a slight auburn tint to it. His hair was almost chin-length that parted to frame the sides of his face, where his bangs almost reached his right eye. He had decided to copy his father's hairstyle, letting it grow, though it took a lot of convincing from his 2 cents much to Nyla's amusing and Naruto's annoyance. He wore the standard Uchiha outfit, not that he knew, a black shirt with a high collar left slightly open and with Terumi clan's crest on its back, with blue pants and bandages around his shins. Around his waist he had a white sash that held a sack containing his ninja tools. This was the outfit that Madara used during his childhood, which got a smile and a hug from Naruto. Me, Hitsuji, Saru, I, Uma, Tora, Katan, Gokaku no Jutsu, running through 6 hand seals at medium speeds so that his son could follow. Puffing his chest, he brought his hand over his mouth, expelling a huge whitish-orange fireball on top of the lake, burning the water and forming a good amount of steam from the boiling water. Turning his gaze over his son, taking notice of the small excitement that went through his eyes for a second before remaining impassive again, bringing a smirk to his lips, he finally stated, as you could see, I used 6 hand seals, but I could do this and other jutsus with only a hand seal. That means I've completely mastered over Katan affinity and due to it being extremely strong, it allows me to produce white fire that it is stronger and hotter than just the normal orange. Now, take your time and try it. The young Uchiha took his father's place near the lake. His mind racing through many analyses, he expanded his chest. So that means I need to breath a certain amount of air. Also, I need to incorporate my chakra with it and add the katan affinity. That's the obvious explanation. I've got already a more or less control over my chakra, so that won't be hard. The most difficult task is adding katan. Katan is fire, so I have to feel and pull the hot feeling side of my chakra, since when I read some Kachan scrolls it said that each affinity has its feeling. Let's try. Madara watched proudly his son's concentrated face, and he could tell already that he got the hang of the theory. But the practical part is always harder, since he needs to distinguish and make use of his chakra perfectly inside him, or else he will blow smoke instead of fire like Izuna. That last, though, brought him an amused chuckle that went unheard by Naruto. His focus was commendable at least. Naruto goes through the same hand seals as his father, slower since he didn't had much practice on it, but the perfect execution made for the speed. Inhaling a tremendous amount of hair and puffing his chest, he went back and forth, tilting his head to the front and expelling medium-sized orangish fireball over the lake. Me, Hitsuji, Saru, I, Uma, Tora, Katan, Gokaku no Jutsu. Madara took notice of the traces of white lines in the fireball's core, meaning the strong affinity over Katan, which was surprising since he hadn't this mastery on his age. Clapping, he walked towards his son. A rare genuine smile crossed his lips as he watched his son heavy breathing because of the strain that the jutsu caused to his lungs. He ruffled his son's black hair, and the words that came next from his mouth made Naruto's heart skip a beat. "I'm proud of you, son." No, it wasn't the words. It was his tone. That was the first time he heard so many strong emotions from his father's. Warm, proud, love. But the most important, acknowledge. Moisture formed on the side of his eyes, and tears fall over his cheeks as he lifted his head, gazing over his idol and role model, not hearing the small gasp from the elder Uchiha. He hugged his father for the dear life of him, letting out a thank you through sobs, not even realizing the improvement of his vision. But Madara did. So, a person doesn't need to go through any traumas to unlock it. Love is a possibility as well. You never cease to amaze me, Naruto-kun. At that moment, the heavens seemed to blow a slight breeze over them as the wind picked up the Naruto's hair that was shadowing his face, revealing a pair of brilliant red eyes that seemed to be spinning widely with a tomo on each pupil dancing over it. A tremendous power ready to be unleashed still locked in them, but Madara could feel it. And undoubtedly the whole world felt the slight shift in the wind. The Sharingan was visible, showing its glory on the young Uchiha's face, as unknowingly his smile matched it. During the 4 years training trip, during the trip with unknown destination to Naruto, he would ask and hear all about what was once the legend of Uchiha Madara. He would take note of the proud voice whenever Madara spoke about his dances. Dance, that was something that the young Uchiha always thought to be a cool interpretation of battles. He would make sure to make use of it. Not that he would say out loud, or he would get the freaking 4 years teased. His relationship with his father was something that he would cherish forever. He didn't have many friends because it was rare for him to go outside the compound, though there was 2 or 3 guys that were currently in the academy that he spoke to. Though he didn't give away any secrets about him or his family. If word got out that he had the Sharingan, it would get him unwelcome attention and probably many problems. Sharingan. The first time his father told him that he had unlocked the greatest Jujutsu commonly known, he had promptly fainted. With it came some arrogance that his mother made sure to cut it off instantly with a few globs of lava. Scary woman. He had a few spars with his small group of friends, though they never gave him a match since he had been trained since very young and by what was probably the strongest shinobi in history, second to Senju Hashirama. Of course, he wouldn't use his precious Sharingan. Senju. He didn't know what to make out of them. He noticed how his Tusen spoke about them, sometimes with venom, sometimes like they weren't worthy his time. Supposedly, he only really respected Hashirama. Madara respected power above all else, and he would do the same. But the most interesting thing he learned was about Uchiha Izuna, his uncle. It wasn't difficult to notice the amount of affection that his father spoke of his uncle, and when he came to know the reason for matters to surpass the curse of hatred that plagued the Uchiha Ikezoku, he made a vow to take the same reason to his grave. He was cut out of his thoughts as Madara kept talking about the same topic he was just thinking. Remember Naruto-kun, my life was always filled of darkness. If it wasn't for your mother, I would have destroyed this world. I already explained you everything. I know you won't do the same mistake as I did. I'm not redeemable from my sins anymore, but at least I want to make sure Izuna is proud of you when it comes the time you both get to see each other." That made him stop on his tracks as Madara walked a few more steps before he noticed that his son wasn't following him. Turning his charcoal eyes to his son, he was surprised by what he said. "Tuchan, I don't care what you were thinking by that time, nor what you were planning to do. I don't care if people call you a monster, a traitor, or an emotionless man. I just care about the present, and without any doubt you are the best father I could wish for. Even if it's rare for you to show any emotions, it makes those moments that you smile significantly more precious, and I will cherish it for eternal. I for one think that you're a strong person that overcame many obstacles during your arduous life, and I bet my life that most people would just commit seppuku if they experienced one of those moments of your life. If you're any monster, that's probably in the battlefield, and I'll be just like you. Because I love the way you are, Tuchan." His breath became heavy as he listened to his son's words. That was probably the most touching words he has ever heard during his long life. A shadow emerged from behind Naruto, and Madara's eyes widened in shock as one of persons he always loved with his dear life materialized, both looking at him with the same expression, same red-colored eyes, though one of them had only two tomos: compassion, proud, and love. The same eyes burning with determination as him. Izuna, unknowingly a tear fall from his hidden right eye, as he walked towards his son, kneeling in front of him as Naruto's expression turned from confusion to content as Madara hugged him tightly. With a full smile on his lips, not that Naruto could see, or he would be death of embarrassment. But the message was clear to him. "Thank you." Some weeks later, they finally came to a stop, after walking at a steady pace and taking a boat going through the large ocean since they wanted to take their time before Naruto's train began. So it came to as a surprise to Naruto when he gazes over at a large village. Though the buildings were destroyed and the streets were empty, only a small, very small, part of it was decent. He was broken out of his thoughts by a sound of boots smashing against the dirt. Looking at his side, he noticed his father walking to that same decent part of the village. He followed. Yuzushiobikure no Sato. Finally getting acquainted with the space, and after his father gave him a brief of history about this village that was destroyed during the Dainiji Ninkai Taisen, Second Ninja World War, by three nations included his own, where it was once the famous Uzumaki Ikizoku's home. One of his origins. Yes, he knew that the Temari Ikizoku was once a branch clan of the Uzumakis. He would make sure to train harder to come close to the level of power of Shodaime Uzukage, Uzumaki Jinryusai, that was said to be on the same level as his father and Senju Hashirama. At least he would match him in the Kenjutsu department, since it was something he planned to explore to the maximum. Coming into a stop where it looked to be what was once their training grounds, both father and son gazed over each other with the same impassive look for what it seemed to be like hours. Naruto's eyebrow twitched after 2 minutes of staring, and Madara let out a victorious smirk. "I took the time to plan your schedule. During the last years, I and your Ka-chan only gave you the basics except for the Katon manipulation exercises. But everything was done for this moment. From now on, I will be working you into the ground, as you are always complaining like a brat." Naruto's eyebrow twitches violently. "So prepare, you better be prepared." After he received a nod, he continued, "For the remaining of this year will be for the complete mastery of the Katon element. It will be unacceptable if you don't surpass me." Getting eyes wide from the young Uchiha. "Don't worry, I believe in you. Also, we'll be upping your physical exercises, and you'll be introduced to the world of weights. So, put this prayer beads on your wrists and ankles, and remove your shirt." As Naruto placed those and removed his shirt, Madara placed the palm of his hand on his chest as an intricate seal spread around it, glowing slightly, then a second later stopped, leaving as if nothing was there. "Fuinjutsu. Shurshur Jufuin." It was instantly, as Madara finished said those words, a huge pressure came inside of his body, and with the unbearable weight his arms gave him, he fell face first on the ground, much to the amusing of the eldest Uchiha. After giving him an explanation about the weight seals, he continued with the schedule. "Now, as I said before, we will be mastering your Katon affinity. But if you finish it before the time I expect, we will be looking forward to a second affinity. Even if you don't have any, doesn't mean you can't use. Now, take this paper and charge chakra on it." Presented with the paper, Naruto grabbed it, already knowing what its functionality from his studies, and charged chakra through it. and they both gazed at the results, one with a hopeful look, Naruto, and the other impassive as always. The only sound that could be heard was the leaves rustling in the wind. And then two scream, Nanny. Even the all-time impassive Madara had a shocked, disbelief and slight jealous look on his face. Who wouldn't? As the little piece of paper split in two parts, indicating a strong affinity for futon. The first part combusted with very hot flames and turned into ash, but what Naruto didn't notice and Madara did was the fact that black flames had erupted in the end for a split of a second, indicating a very strong affinity for Katon, which Madara already knew. But the possibility of using Enten, which was the highest level of Katon and all Uchiha's dreams of having. Nyla-chan, we created a monster, he though with a sigh. The second and last part turned into dust and crumbled away, indicating the Doton affinity. So, Naruto-kun has Futon, Doton, and Katon with the possibility to evolve to Enten. Amazing. And because of the potential that his Katon has, he will probably be able to use Nyla's Yoton Kekkei Genkai, though we don't know if he will ever unlock it. With a cough, he broke Naruto out of his stupor and started to explain what had happened, what was going to happen, and in case he surpassed his expectations, Madara would give him a very special gift. And so with all set, they began the training. For years later, Yuzushiobikure no Sato. Two imposing figures gazed over each other, one with dark green eyes and the other charcoal eyes boring into the other's soul. The first one had spiky, white hair that reached to waist length with shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right eye with many creases around his eyes due to his age. He wore his traditional crimson armor with numerous metal plates, forming protective guards along his chest, waist, shoulders, and thighs. An orange-brown gunbai, which had a long black chain running up it attached to his back. Also, he was wearing a metal belt, as well as a brown leather sash to hold some of his other weapons. This was Uchiha no Borii, Uchiha Madara. He had grown old. He had several wrinkles all over his face. He was kind of annoyed because he could feel his power was not even half of what it once was. At least he created a monster who had made him extremely proud during the years, and he would watch over him from heavens or hell. It didn't matter. He was a proud father. The second one was a fair-skinned young teenager with spiky, black hair that had a slight auburn tint to it. He had let his hair grow to waist length with shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right green eye. Just like his father, he had a good build thanks to the thousands hours of physical training, which with the way seals only increased. Standing at 5 feet 4 inches, relatively tall for his age. This was Uchiha Terumi Naruto, Jigaku no Shonen, a title that Oda Geikure, a new village, gave to him after burning alive 30 of the 40 that had tried to kill him and his father when they were buying supplies in Nami no Kuni. The other 10 were dealt with, leaving one man barely alive so he could send a message to whoever tried to attack that country. He also wore a brown leather sash across his waist holding his most prized sword that his summons have given to him during his 3rd year as a token for the hard work he displayed whenever the boss summon called for him to train with them. Though he still had a lot of work to do with his kenjutsu style, and the fact that he still didn't have unlocked his sword's potential much to his annoyance. He gazed over his father. He could tell that this last for 4 years were intense. He got a lot stronger, but he knew it was just the beginning. He wasn't at the level as his father was at his prime, which slightly scared him. But by now he could read his father easily, and there was something in his eyes that he didn't like to see. Regret. Why was he feeling regret? Maybe it was because I didn't meet his expectations. No, he had appraised me many times during the years. So what is it? A calm, slightly raspy voice broke out of his thoughts. Naruto-kun, this is your final test. If you pass, you shall receive a special gift. If not, we will just go back to the village and start all over again to correct your mistakes, though it's doubtful. He received only a small nod, and they both unfolded their arms, tensing their muscles. Dust from the ground starts to pick up and circling around them as a lone leaf that was slowly descending right between them. Tu-chan, getting a raised eyebrow from the eldest, not expecting him to talk. Nevertheless, he replied, as the same lone leaf was floating already by their knees level still descending. 5 seconds to touch the ground. 2 seconds from touching the ground. Shall we dance? That brought a full-blown smirk, not of arrogance but proud on Madara's face, as the leaf was about to rest on the field they were standing. Give me one final good dance, son. The leaf touches the field. The ground where both Uchihas were standing cracked from the impulse, and a second later they clashed, A booming sound was heard as their fists collided, sending both backwards. Letting small smile gracing his lips, Madara moved his hands over his chest, formed a sequence of hand seals. He inhaled a huge amount of air, adding a tremendous amount of chakra that made Naruto sweat a little. Na'ushi inu uma saruai tora. Katan, Goka mes shitsu. Bringing himself back and forth, he exhaled a whitish flamethrower. Naruto could feel the warmth, and it was still relatively far from him. He made his own hand seal. Enten, Hiroi Cape. Naruto exhaled his own wide wall of black flames that gave him the deserved title in the bingo book, Jigaku no Shonen. Black flames danced around the whitish ones who couldn't overcome it. Hiroi Cabe had the power to be both offensive and defensive jutsu, as it could be used with a different form instead of the wall he made. He was broken out of his thoughts as his senses alerted him from danger. Tilting his head upwards, a huge fireball was coming his way, signifying the use of the famous Kitan, Gakakyu no Jutsu. Clicking his teeth in frustration for getting distracted by his jutsu, he slammed both of his palms in the ground. As in front of him the earth began to shook, and a second later a wide wall elevated from the ground. Doton, Dorihiki. Come on Naruto-kun, you can't be on the defensive forever. Madara folded his arms over his chest as he channeled a huge amount of chakra through his red, three-tomoed eyes, evolving to his famed and unique Iron no Mangekyo Sharingan. A blue ethereal creature started to emerge around the white-haired Uchiha, as 2 seconds later a terrifying humanoid was visible. Its front face had elongated canine teeth in its lower jaw bracket and 2 tusks growing from said jaw, while the back face has similarly elongated canine teeth in its upper jaw bracket and a single horn protruding from its forehead. Susanoo. He didn't stop there as he clapped his hands, intertwining his fingers. Me. Mokutan Hijitsu, Jukai Koten. I can't go further on my Susanoo because of my age, but the humanoid form is still reasonable. Now what will you do, son? A roll of sweat runs down Naruto's forehead as he watches the entirely ground shook as several thick trees exploded from inside out towards him at great speeds. His mind racing miles per second as the trees gets closer and closer. He smirks. Madara watched as the trees got closer to his son. He was about to stop them from hitting his son when he narrowed his Sharingan eyes at the smirk from the young Uchiha. His sensor abilities detected a large buildup of chakra, and when the trees were about to hit the black-haired teen, a massive explosion of black flames emerged from Naruto's entire body, scorching the trees and everything around it. A look of surprise passed through Madara's face as the flames started to take shape on a very similar form of his humanoid Susanoo, though not as tall. Enten, Akuma no Yona. Black flames danced around the ethereal humanoid, its glowing yellow eyes gazing over Madara, who came over his shock, appraising his son. Oh, now that's an interesting jutsu. Smiling, he replied, yeah, it takes a lot of chakra to maintain this form long times, but its power is beautiful and flashy just as we love. Now, to the final step of our dance. 2 arms took shape from the black humanoid, as black flames dances around it. Naruto starts to perform a several number of hand seals as the humanoid surprisingly was following and copying the same hand movements. A small ball compressed of black flames formed out of thin air in front of the humanoid's mouth. A second later, with a monstrous roar that shook the earth beneath him, they launched it on the ground, which after touching the inhumongous explosion of black flames that took shape of a dragon went towards Madara with speeds that even he had difficulty to follow as his age was now taking the toll on his body. Enten, Okibanaryu no Funka. A true proud smile spread across Madara's face as he analyzes this jutsu in less than a second. Similar to what his son did, he and his humanoid Susanoo form a single hand seal, putting as much chakra as he could muster. Tilting their head back and forth, a massive wide-spread wall of white-bluish flames exploded from his mouth, bringing in front of him his gun by. As well, he runs chakra through the large weapon. With a swing, a huge gust collides with the wall of fire, expanding and increasing its power even more. Edaruen, Daigoka Mekyaku. Kirigakure no Sato. Terumi compound. You can find Terumi Uchiha Nyla gardening some flowers outside of her house. During the last 4 years, she had found this oddly satisfying as her husband and son were out on a training trip. Between gardening and doing some easy missions for the village, she of course chose the former. At least it gave her some peace and took her mind out of unnecessary and unwelcome thoughts. As she gazes through one of the windows of her house, a blood-sealed scroll rests over the dining table. Releasing an exhausted sigh, the 52-years-old woman is interrupted from her thoughts as the ground beneath her shook slightly. Her head instantly turned towards a specific direction with a faraway look, tears already threatening to fall from her eyes. Flashback. A spiky, black-haired man is standing behind a window gazing over through it at another spiky, black-haired with an auburn tint to it, trying to boil the lake with his hands, as this was one of the steps to achieve complete mastery over the Katan element. A sigh came out of his lips as he turned his gaze over her beautiful wife, who was sitting on the couch. Walking towards her, he started. In a few years, Naruto and I will be going on a training trip. The auburn-haired locked eyes with her husband for several seconds. She knew he was dying. They had talked about it when she confronted him after seeing multiple times running into the bathroom and staying there many minutes, just coughing, and sometimes she could have sworn that she heard him cry in pain. But the question is, why does he want to go on this training trip so badly with just his son? Doesn't he love her anymore? No, that's impossible, otherwise he wouldn't even mention it. For years. That's a lot of time. Time he doesn't Eyes widened in shock and realization as the only possibility hit her like a huge rock. I can see you figured it out. It needs to be done. It will be for his good. The best gift I could have ever hoped to give him. He takes out of his pouch 3 scrolls and gazes over her wife again as moisture former on the edges of her eyes. The red scroll is for you, with instructions on how to proceed on a certain matter that one day he will need. And a personal letter for you. The black scroll is for him, explaining everything why I'm doing this and why. He doesn't know I'm dying. The white scroll contains my belongings and knowledge. Tell him to use it wisely, as power comes with responsibility. Thank you for everything, love. Madara, you. Don't worry, I've made peace with my mind. I lived enough already, and my greatest regret is not to have seen things through earlier. You were under my services as my enbu during so many years. How come I was so blind to see it? He tried to crack a joke at the end, but deep down he knows it was the truth. At least now he can join his little brother and most probably get teased. He would like that, not that he would admit anytime soon. Madara, I love you. She throws herself and hugs him, daring to anyone take him away from her. Tears falling from her eyes, soaking his black high-collar shirt. I love you too. Flashback end. Salty tears running over her cheeks as puffy red eyes looks over the orangish sun already settling down. An amazing view in front of her eyes as a warm feeling run through her body. Goodbye, Koi. Hope you and Izuna-san will be watching over our son changing this world for good. Yuzushiyogakure no Sato. An enormous explosion of flames was the result of both jutsus clashing with each other in a battle between black flames and white bluish flames, trying to overcome each other. No more than 10 seconds later, it seemed like the white flames were going to win, but with another mighty roar, the black dragon literally consumes his opponent and instantly bringing itself towards the skeletal blue figure, as Madara couldn't maintain the chakra for the humanoid form anymore. Another huge explosion shook the earth, and everything went quiet. 10 minutes later, a pair of green eyes opened, looking at the clear sky. Memories from minutes ago raced through his mind, and he instantly stands up, ignoring the flames all over the place, running towards a figure that was lying on the scorched grass. Tioyu-chan. He froze. His body started to tremble. His knees gave up, and he fall over the old body of his father. T2-chan. Please, don't leave me. I'll never forgive myself. Tears falling from his eyes as he screams, straining his lungs to the limit. An amused, weak chuckle was heard. Wait. A chuckle, then a cough. He opened his blood-red, teary eyes and gazes over the same blood-red eyes with an exquisite form. Tioyu-chan. Zetsu, help my father, quick. Instantly, a white Zetsu emerged from the ground, gazing over without any emotions the bloody figure of Madara. What the hell are you doing, Standy Dash? Naruto, that's enough. That voice broke him out of rage instantly as he turned over to his father again, kneeling beside him. Well, what do you mean, Tu-chan? I was already dying. Go home. There's a scroll explaining everything. I want you to take my eyes and keep them. Whoever tries to hurt your precious people, give them hell. Madara finished that last statement, managing an arrogant smirk crossing his lips. Naruto started to sob uncontrollably as he heard that his father had everything planned and pretended to die by his hands, widening his eyes in shock as he now knew the whole reason of the test and the gift. Even dying, all you thought was about me. Madara took another deep breath, Take my gun high with you. She's strong. You can trust her to defend you from anything. The young Uchiha managed to whisper, Hi, Dad. I'll make sure to use everything you taught me for the good and pass down your legacy to the next generation. I'll always protect my family from anyone who dares to try anything on them. I love you, Tuchan. The elder Uchiha held a smirk on his face as he removed his eyes, letting out a grunt of pain and placing inside a jar full of a greenish liquid. His job done, Madara placed a hand on his son's cheek, giving him a small smile. I love you, son. His arm went limp, but before it could drop on the ground, Naruto grabbed it, squeezing it as his eyes burned and unknowingly started to spin widely at untraceable speeds. They started to emerge together, taking its shape. A power only awakened by his two ancestors, Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Izuna. This was their legacy passed down to him, and he would prove them that he's worth of that legacy. That was his vow. Another tear fall from his new eyes before everything went black. A week has passed since the death of Uchiha Madara. It's only been a few hours since Naruto woke up, though, with a huge headache and still exhausted both mentally and physically in some kind of hospital, which put him over the edge, but then memories raced through his mind, recalling why was he there. Tuchan. He gripped to the bed, but relaxed a second later as his sensor abilities detected someone else in the room. Tilting his head to the side, a shadow emerged from the ground, revealing it to be the annoying white Zetsu. Naruto-kun, it's time to go back to the village. Next week will be the academy graduation of your generation. If you move on reasonable speeds, you'll be there in 5 days top. Also, shouldn't you think about your mother also? She's probably afraid and worried about you. In somewhat a cheerful tone, though the last statement turned out as a rare serious tone from the creature. Mother. Shit. How could I forgot about her? Hi. I'll be going now. You can head back now. Take the jar with my father's eyes and his body and take it to my mother. Standing up, he went to dress his clothes that were basically the same since the last ones were all battered. Looking over a mirror, he gave a small nod to Zetsu, who started to merge with the ground as flames started to consume Naruto's body. A second later, both had vanished towards the same destination. Home. Kirigakure no Sato. Been in hard week for an auburn-haired beauty. Not only had she to mourn the death of her husband, but now her father wanted to meet his son, which was weird and worrisome. She didn't want her son to get involved with a man that, although being her father, never gave her the proper attention nor any type of affections since his wife died by assassination. She could understand the cold attitude towards everyone, but even his family, Saito Terumi. So right now she's drinking some hot tea with him as his motionless eyes bored in her soul. She returned the gaze, showing that she's not a little princess anymore. In a flat tone, she asked again, so, can I ask you why now? Why do you want to meet my son? The man in front of her hummed a bit before replying. I wanted to see the type of child that a Terumi and a legendary clan that founded another village would produce. He raised his hand as she was about to speak. Don't fret. I don't have any ill intentions towards your son. Though I'm surprised that an Uchiha would be living in our village for years without anyone finding out. Truly impressive. While inwardly she was sweating a bit, she replied in the same flat tone, It matters not, since my husband is dead. My son will be here soon enough for the academy graduation's day this year. Meet him there if you want. As she finished the statement, though hit her mind, and the temperature of the room decreased several degrees as the kill-led intent she was unleashing was massive. Even the house shook a bit, and a roll of sweat fall from Sato's forehead, as an emotionless voice sent a chill through his spine. Don't you dare to take him away from me for that ANBU of yours, or I'll kill you. Understood. Receiving a hesitant nod, the pressure vanished, and as he was about to leave, the clan had looked over his shoulder, locking eyes with his daughter. I would never do anything that would endanger my grandson. I don't want to make the same mistakes I've done with you, my daughter. The last part was a mere whisper, but she heard it, and her eyes widened in shock as tears threatened to fall from her eyes again. As she turned her head to the spot where her father was standing, it was empty. Unknowingly, she had a small smile, as her thoughts immediately turned to another person. Come home, Sochi. 4 days later, few miles from Kirigakure no Sato. Been a few uneventful days for Naruto. He had no one to talk with as both Zetsus were busy, so he kept running so he could be with the last person of his family. His precious mother. I will give my life to protect you, Ka-chan. His Sharingan gave to life as his body burned with determination, unknowingly spinning widely. That was another thing, his father died by his hands, so he could unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan. No, he wanted to die as a proud warrior. In a dance. The other thing was just a bonus. His father had probably left his notes with his mother, so he needed to go back fast to start study it as he didn't want to use a power he didn't know anything about. That was one of his father's lessons. And mostly because he wants to see his mother badly and support her. He was broken out of his thoughts as a zoing sound was heard around him, and thanks to his Sharingan, he jumped in time as many shurikens hit the ground where he was standing. Doing some backflips, he gazed over the spot where the shurikens came from as four shadows left the trees they were hiding and reappear in front of him. His Sharingan eyes narrowed to the girl in front of him, remembering her from the bingo book, whereas the rest were non-important even though they were older than her. Every one of them had a slash over the symbol on their forehead. Sunagake, your missing means. What are you doing here? Always though you liked hotter temperatures. Finished as he folded his arms over his chest, inwardly cursing himself for showing his dijitsu. Oh well, it doesn't matter. The woman stepped forward as she takes a black book, going through the pages for some seconds and finally stopping on the right one. She reads it out loud. Name, unknown. Moniker, Jigaku no Shonen, devilish boy. Age, 14 to 16. Village, Kirigakure no Sato. Rank, high B. Relations, unknown. Known elements, Katon and Inten. Description, fair-skinned with spiky, waist-length black hair that has a slight auburn tint to its shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right green eye. Bounty, 5 million. Odo, approach with Kashio, closing the book and placing it inside of her pocket. She continues, your bounty is quite high for a simple B-ranked shinobi. Oh well, it doesn't matter. It's nothing personal. He raised an eyebrow at the blunt disregard of his skills. Shikuten no Pakura, I would never thought that you would underestimate someone before the main dance. Although I'm not judging you, I thought you would not take this life since you're skilled enough to be more than a simple bounty hunter, but the fact that you were betrayed by your village gives anyone enough reasons to snap. Well, you're making a big mistake. As he finished the last part, every missing nin tensed as they sensed a build-up on chakra from the boy as he formed only in handed seal. Puffing his chest, tilting his head back and forth, he exhales a long stream of hot whitish fire right into the middle of the group. Katon, Karyu Enden. This will split them. Pakura is dangerous with her Kekiai Genkai. Mayenten versus Shikuten, now that would be fun. Naruto's thirst for battles always gives him the necessary adrenaline to keep dancing. It was similar with Madara. They just love when their blood starts pumping when they find an worthy partner that can follow their steps on the dance floor. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 plumes of smokes out of thin air before 3 identical replicas of him were standing there side by side. He finally addresses them. Deal with the nuisances. Dismissed. As they vanished without any trace whatsoever, he charged chakra through his legs and jumped to the side as 4 large spheres of intense heat dropped where he was standing, causing a massive explosion where even the winds that followed the explosion were burning everything. Shikuten, Hinotama no Haifuku. As the smoke disappeared, 2 figures are staring to each other with different emotions. One kind of surprised, and the other the all-time impassive. Thoughts racing through her mind as she tries to come with an explanation why this boy wasn't a skeleton already. Why? The heat of the wind should have dehydrated him. How? Although his face showed any emotions, inwardly he was cursing his stupidity for not remembering that Shikuten was as troublesome as his Inten, and now he had to pay with a burned arm. If not for his Dijitsu, he would be death as it made him able to see the Shikuten chakra through the atmosphere. As his mind raced miles per second, black flames started totems around his body, surrounding it entirely. TSH, I gotta be careful. My Inten no Yoroi consumes a large amount of chakra to sustain it. I gotta finish this since I'm not fully recovered. I can't get close since it will hurt, and she has more years of experience than me. If I could use that Shikuten as well against her. That's it. Pakura, who took notice of the flames, realization hit upon her. So, that's why my Shikuten didn't dehydrated you. You used your Inten to fight fire with fire. Impressive how they are almost at the same level even when I've trained longer than you, but with my next jutsu, it will be over. She finished as a palm-sized sphere is formed between her hands. Gritting her teeth, she launches it to the sky as a second later it creates a fake sun that was building up tons of energy. A sunbeam is launched at tremendous speeds towards Naruto, who took the time to grab an hilt over his shoulder. He swung the object as it glows pure white, clashing it against the beam. Shikuten, Sabakuhi. Her breath was heavy as that jutsu takes a toll on her chakra. She expected some kind of explosion, but when she heard nothing lifted her head, and then a look of shock on her beautiful face, as the object her opponent had in his hands seemed to absorb the beam's power. She was broken out of her thoughts as the young Uchiha gazed over her, already positioning his weapon that was still glowing white in her direction, and in an emotionless tone that sent chills through her spine. A beam of pure chakra was sent towards the green-haired woman. Yuki Higeshi. Boom. A following explosion and in huge smoke that took shape of a mushroom took place as the beam seemed to hit the target. As the smoke disappeared, a figure, or more like a skeleton of what was once Pakura, was laying on the crater. As he walked towards her, his danger sensors goes high alert, and he sidestepped as a foot followed by a leg, body, and finally a mop of green hair with two brownish bangs crashed into the ground. He narrowed his eyes at the figure before gazing over at the body lying on the crater, who seemed to be disintegrating under its hot temperatures. A Kanso no Bunshin, dehydrated clone. She managed to speak between her breaths. Hi. It was my safe plan if you had escaped the beam. I never thought you would redirect it. She narrowed her eyes as she saw him going through several hand seals. Doing the same, both expelled their forms of flames at each other. Enten. Kayadena Bursuryu. With a roar that looked like it came from an animal, he breathes a huge black flamethrower as the brown-eyed finished her last hand seal, exhaling 4 huge and powerful spheres of heat that looked like fireballs that seemed to dehydrated everything it touched. Shikuten Kajusatsu. Enten versus Shikuten. Power and durability versus hottest flames, in my opinion. Both jutsus collided with each other for several seconds before the atmosphere around them kept increasing as many rolls of sweat were visible on their foreheads. A few seconds later, as neither jutsus gained the upper hand, they exploded, sending a wave of heat in every direction as it burned everything in that area. Seconds turned into minutes as a figure with his naked chest was walking around the scorched area. Everything was burned and lifeless. There was no grass, only multiple scorched areas and dust. Not even the trees escaped. This is a nice view. A small hot breeze washed over his long, spiky black hair, his Sharingan spinning widely as he tries to detect any single movement. His eyes widened slightly as a lone kunai was on his way. He tilted his head to the side, cursing his still exhausted body. A sound. He gazed over the kunai and his eyes widened in shock as an explosive note was attached to it and ready to explode. Everything seemed to slow down as he involuntarily pushed in huge amount of chakra into his eyes before a loud booming was heard. Close to them, 2 figures could be seen. The one that was supporting a body finally said, "It's over." With all of the chakra spread around the atmosphere, his sensor abilities couldn't pinpoint us, so a single kunai was probably enough. Right, Pakura-sensei? The person addressed opened one of her brown eyes, looking over the kunai's direction, followed by a loud booming and more smoke. She couldn't help but feel that it still wasn't over, and inwardly, she actually didn't want to kill the man that has gained her respect. She was cut out of her thoughts as the smoke disappeared, even though it was hard to see because of the hot temperatures that seemed to shimmer the atmosphere now and again. I don't think so. Maki-chan. Seconds later, everyone could see a man down on his knees with one of his hands placed over his head, as it looked like he was in pain if the tightly closed eyes were any indication. And in pain he was. Naruto never felt so much pain in those eyes of his as he got another huge headache. At least he was still alive thanks to that black skeletal bones that protected him in the last second, but damn, that took a lot out of him. He heard about that before from Madara. Oh yeah, this is Sanoo. But it didn't take my father's humanoid form. Probably because of my inexperience and my body is still not recovered from the exhaustion. At least my clones took care of her team, though he was impressed with the older woman throughout their clashes. And if that kunai was any indication, she was still alive as well. As he turned his gaze over where the kunai came from, he noticed 2 silhouettes at distance. So, she got back up. She came out of nowhere since I don't remember her. Spitting out some blood, he stood up with his bare chest out in the open, finally gazing over the nuisance with cold green eyes that interfered them. Seeing nothing special as he had noticed the slight flinch, he locked eyes with the battered form of Pakura. He opened his mouth to speak. "Shikuten no Pakura, you're still alive." With a flat tone, he spoke to her. Shrugging her shoulders, wincing at the burns, she replied, "It seems like Jigaku no Shonen." They both gazed over each other's eyes as if they were passing a message to one another. After several seconds, both cracked a smile, earning a confused look from Maki. I hope to see you again, Pakura. Me too, Naruto. Me too, Naruto. And then I can have my rematch. She said as her smile widened, even more seeing Naruto with an arrogant smirk on his face. HN Giant. After a cool wave with his arm, his body was consumed in whitish flames, and a second later he was gone. Maki, realizing something, screamed, "He just ignored me." Though, her partner wasn't listening as she was looking over where the Uchiha was just standing seconds ago, before looking at the sky as another warm breeze washed over them. "I'll see you again soon, Naruto." 3 days later, Kirigakure no Sato. It took him 3 fucking days to get back home. 2 more days than what he was expecting because of the exhausting battle he had. He almost died when her mother gave him a bone-crushed hug. They both missed each other a lot, and now with their husband/father gone, they only have one another for support. Since he came later than expected, he wasn't given any time to rest because an ANBU had knocked on the door to inform that the team placements were scheduled in less than 2 hours. He was lucky because an unknown party had voucher for him to pass, saying that he had enough skills and knowledge that he didn't need to do the written and practical tests. He would have to find and thank that person in the future. So with reluctance, he separated from his mother, went to take a shower, and shunned to Academy's rooftop, where he set his gaze over his future teammates. He knew he would be the face of his generation because he had been trained by the best, so right now he had to prove everyone that he could take that mantle and protect them. Even though a part of him that he inherited from his father's side was annoyed since he had to be the one to look over some brats. Well, I hope I get a decent team, or else I'll shove up the Sanbai in Yagura-sama, where the sun doesn't shine. Academy's classroom. When Naruto and his peers were all inside the classroom and had taken their seats, as expected, everyone was looking at him. Looks ranging from curiosity to jealously, as everyone could feel the power that he was transmitting within him, and lust? He shook his head from that last emotion as he knew who was giving him those looks, and he shuddered just thinking about it. Fangirls. He gazed over the ones that relatively interested him, like the blue-haired guy with a bandaged sword on his back. Oh, if I'm correct, that's one of the famous swords used by the Shinobigatana Shishinin Shu, the Hiramakarei. And to be used by one of my age, that means he's capable. He tilted his head to the side as a spark of electricity caught his attention. His mind racing as he analyzed the 2 fangs that were resting on the back of a short red-haired girl's back. That's the famous twin swords Kiba. Kaachan said that the former wielder Raiga Kurisuke had an apprentice. Get, that's her. She's also a few years older than us. Interesting. Everyone ceased the talking as the doors opened, revealing what was probably the teacher of the class. The chunin went over his desk and started to read the paper he brought with him. 10 minutes later, after the boring speech. So starting off with Team 1, Ryudo, Kura, and finally, Team 9, Chojuro, Imuri Ringo, and Tamiri Naruto. Your sensei will be Mei Terumi. And that's it. Becoming a genin is just the beginning of your journey, so you need to up your training even more. Thank you. Good luck with your career and make our village proud. And so, the journey of Uchiha Terumi Naruto has begun. What will happen when he and Mei finally meet? What will be his team reaction when he shows his power? When will the world discover the existence of another Uchiha that is outside of Konoha? What of Pakura? In the heat of her battle, she didn't even thought about an Uchiha living in Kirigakure. Will she use that knowledge and update the bingo book? What would be Konoha's reaction? A 4th ninja world war looms in the horizon. What about the chunin exams that will take place in 6 months, in Konoha no less? 2 months later. It has been 2 months since the team assignments. Naruto still remembers his kin entering the classroom, followed by a ball of lava on the Academy's teacher, who was drooling at the sight of her breast. No one noticed the slight tint of pink on Naruto's cheeks before it became normal with his impassive look. Except for Mei, but that would be for later. Team 9 had gone to a barbecue restaurant, so they could learn more and create bonds with each other. They had agreed to meet at the training grounds designated for their team to take a survival test that left them a little confused at first, but then Mei waved them off before stealing a kiss on her fellow clan member's cheek and leaving the team to God knows where. Flashback. Training grounds number 9. Their figures were in front of another who was currently telling them the rules of this exercise. They first 2 to touch her would pass, whereas the latest would go back to the academy, as simple as that. The blue-dressed woman, in a serious tone, continued, "Come to me with intent to kill." Naruto's eyebrow raised slightly as he knew something was missing. There were no teams with only 2 genins. May noticed this, but thought of something completely different as she walked towards the black-haired teen, enveloping him in a breast-crushing hug as he was lost in thoughts. She purred on his ears, my, don't worry, Naruto. You can touch me wherever you want. His eyebrow twitched violently. Get off me, woman. You are too old for M dash. His face went pale as she had that oh-so-sweet smile plastered on her face. That's too dangerous, even for his Susanoo. What? Did you say, are you? Even though his face was pale as a ghost and his sensors were screaming in danger, he crossed his arms over his chest, put up his arrogant smirk, and tried to defuse the situation the best way he could think of. Boom. Chojuro and Ringo's sweat dropped and shook their head at their antics as the water battlefield just turned into a lava battlefield out of nowhere. 10 minutes later, after getting over the pleasantries, the lava user said begin. The three Genins nod their head to each other as if sending a hidden message, making the older Terumi smile in surprise as never in million Heirace. She thought they already knew the answer right at the beginning. Though she knew these three were the best childs coming out of the academy, but she noticed the reluctance on Ringo's face. She's 2 years older than them. She probably thinks that she can't afford babysitting them. May didn't know how right she was. Chojuro stepped forward, already going through a small chain of hand seals. Puffing his cheeks, he breathed a torrent of water towards May as the young Uchiha, without any seals surprising everyone, puffed his chest, releasing a violent gust of wind from his mouth, which collided with the torrent, instantly expanding it. Ringo was nowhere to be seen. Sueton Miserapa, Futon, Daytapa, seeing the mini tornado on her way, she stomped the ground with her foot as a giant thick wall of earth ascended in front of her. Approve of her strong Doton affinity. Doton, Doriahiki. A massive tremor was felt as both jutsus finally made contact. Right-on, Jabashi. May widened her eyes in shock as a stream of lightning hit her back as a victorious smirk was plastered on Ringo's face, just to turn in shock as the body in front of her melted entirely. Yogan no Bunshin? When? A voice behind her snapped out of her thoughts. When I made the wall. Doton, Doryu Taiga. In front of the auburn-haired woman, the ground turned into a large mud river, throwing her off of balance. The oldest woman continued her onslaught, forming a simple hand seal as a giant-shaped earth dragon had materialized from the river, launching several mud balls towards the genin. Using the same hand seal and puffing her already large chest, she breathed a hot flamethrower which combined with the mud shots, igniting it. Doton, Doryuden, /Keton. Karyuden, widening her eyes in shock. The red-haired girl was already bracing for the impact as she couldn't support herself anywhere when a voice that which she came to relish in the future made her look upwards as what she recognized to be one of the famous Shinobigatanas was coated in chakra, taking shape of a long sword. The blue-haired genin swung it as an arc of pure chakra cut through and destroyed the ignited mud shots and the dragon head altogether. Hiramakari Kaiho. The mud river was cancelled as May had to jump away from the swing, impressed that his little genin had pumped so much chucks on it in such short time. She smiled at the appreciation Ringo was showing to her savior, who was already placing some bandages on her foot that almost broke in the river. She had to put those musings aside as she had to jump away as the ground where she was standing protrude spears of earth that would have skewed her. Doton, Doryuso. She jumped in front of her kin, who was gazing over her with an impassive look. She took the chance. My, if you want to ogle my body like that, you just had to ask. I can arrange you some time later on. Her response made her eyebrows twitch. Though, with a strained smile as she wanted to kill him for such blatant disrespect over her body. Nonetheless, I see you have both Katan and Doton affinities, and since we're from the same clan, maybe we can work on unlocking your Kekkei Genkai. What do you say, cutie? An arrogant smirk was her response as he went through a chain of hand seals that she knew all too well, and she narrowed her eyes. I am possible. Yoton. Yokai no Jutsu. Naruto spits an extremely and powerful acid fluid out of his mouth as May snapped out of her thoughts, going through a different sequence of hand seals, spitting a massive protective amount of lava around her. Yoton, Kaienheki. As both jutsus collided and canceling each other, May gazes over the youngest on a new light and in a seductively tone, spoke, as she cleaned a small portion of lava that was sticking on the side of her lips from the last jutsu. You're an interesting man. I actually might just want to melt you. Speaking for the first time, he tensed his muscles, transferring almost half of his chakra reserves on his lungs, let's get over with this dance already. The Yogin no Megami, lava goddess, raised an eyebrow at the term dance, but tensed as she sensed the large build-up on his chakra. The next jutsu will be huge. He made a single hand seal. Rocking back and forth, Naruto breathed a monstrous wide-spread wall of whitish fire that would be forever imprinted in her mind for the rest of her life. Katan, Goka Mikyaku. She missed the small nod from Naruto as the fire was on her way. Even the winds burned at the intense heat, proving his mastery over the Katan element. Mei started a big chain of hand seals, putting as much chucks as she could muster in the next technique. She puffed her cheeks, releasing a massive wave of water, and even then she knew it wouldn't be enough, but bought the time she needed to leap away. Suetun, Kaijin Nami Shigeki. She took a deep breath as that was one of her strongest defensive techniques, and it took tons of chakra. A large mist spread over the battlefield as the jutsus clashed, and there the beauty knew how right she was from her last thought, as the heat from her student's jutsu made the mist almost impossible to inhale any oxygen without burning her lungs. She was snapped out of her thoughts as she felt 4 tips of blades grazing her perfect creamed skin, a twin sword threading to slit her neck, a long chakra-coated sword targeting her spine, and a simple sword placed where her heart would be. Even in her situation, she let a true smile grace her lips. You pass. Flashback end. After passing the test with flying colors, Team 9 spent the next 2 whole months doing idiotic missions around and outside the village, but they were limited to only take care of the bandit camps, much to the Junin's annoyance and Mei's amusing. At least everyone made their first team. Well, in Chojuro and Ringo's case, that is. During the second month, Naruto decided that his team was ready to know one of his biggest secrets after telling and showing them his Sharingan, as he knew when they started to go on harder missions he would need to use it and didn't want to bother himself explaining everything. Needless to say, his nose found the heaven scent of Mei's breasts while mumbling something about strong man, muscle body, and godly eyes, much to the amusement of the other 2 genins, as they were already acquainted to their antics, and the sweat drop and jealous face of Yagura, who was present at the time and already knew everything from his teacher and ancestor, Sandei Mizukichi. He doesn't know he was actually Madara himself, just that he was an Uchiha and made him sworn secrecy so that the elders didn't cause any problems. Was at the end of the second month that the things were finally going to start to become interesting, much to Naruto's thirst for battle's relief. Present time. Mizukichi's office. Yagura was behind his desk, gazing over the forms of Team 9. He was already expecting this proficiency on missions, but he was still reluctant to send them on this specifically important mission. It was his dream to recreate the second generation of the famous Kiri no Shinobigatana Shishininchu. They had already in their ranks the wielders of Hiramakiri and Kiba. In his office's vault were resting and waiting the swords Shibuki and Kabutawari, but since Raiga Kurisuki died on a mission leaving its legacy to Yuri Ringo, they currently have no one to train the candidates on the arts of Serinto Karingu, silent killing. Many of them left Kirigakure because they tried to oppose the Mizukichi for continuing the final test of their academy. That later on the world got knowledge of this and gave them the name of Chidori no Sato. Half of them died, and only Raiga stayed in the village as he didn't care. And this mission was to bring Kubikirabocho and its wielder, Momochi Zabuza, back to the village and train his successor. He was snapped out of his thoughts as an angelic voice invaded his ears. Yago-kun, my team is ready to be sent on B-ranked missions as we already have the required amount of D and C rank done. Puffing his cheeks, he pouted, Mei-san, give me the deserved respect. I am the great Yonde Mizukichi. She giggled at his kawaii face, whereas 2 students of her team just sweat dropped and the other remained impassive. Fine. You will be going on a B-rank mission that can very well ascend to an A rank, but I trust you guys that you can take care of any troubles you might have, right? This actually brought a large smirk on the black-haired teen as his body started to tremble in excitement, which was noticed by Yagura and Mei, who shared a look. Don't worry, I'm sure we can protect ourselves. So, what's the mission, Panda-kun? She purred at the end, enjoying the annoyance face of the short man and ignoring the grumbles, disrespect, superiors, and old ladies, though that last one made her lips twitch. He finally answered, your mission is to head to Nami no Kuni and bring back Momochi Zabuza and his apprentice by any means. 2 days later, Nami no Kuni. For figures were hiding in the trees as in front if them a battle was going on between their target and a Konoha team. The latest was losing badly, and as they were about to be decapitated, another voice stopped them. Mokutan Mokujihiki. A large, strong wall of wood sprout out of the ground, intercepting the large sword in front of a gray-haired man, who sighed in relief and finally relaxed by the following voices. They took their time. Katan Ninpo, Hibashiri, Futon, Daitapa. A feminine voice shouted as she breathed a large jet of flames that took form of a ring surrounding the two figures, one with a large sword on his back, and the other with an hunterine mask, as a strong gust that came out of a black, bearded man combined with the flames, increasing its size and heat. As the three figures jumped in front of their comrades, the gray-haired man, who was regaining his breath, gave them an eyed smile. "You're late, Tenzo," Anko Asuma. The now revealed Tenzo spoke. "The world must be coming to an end for you to say that, Kakashi." The others nodded in agreement, and a tall, well-built man, who had a cigar on his mouth, took a step forward, glaring the two figures who were surrounded by the wall of fire. "Momochi Zabuza, Hunter Neen, you're surrounded. Surrender, as you have no way out of this." The woman with an intricate trench coat, who supported an insane grin, spoke. "Maybe we can let my snakes feed them. What do you say?" The Kubikarabocho wielder smirked at that and replied in a gruff voice. "HN, do you think we didn't know that the copycat over there wouldn't call for backup?" On his side, the long black-haired figure, seeing their shocked faces, added, "I don't like killing people, but since you threatened Zabuza-sama's life, I'll make an exception for you." And huge sadistic smirk, not that they could see because of the mask, sent shivers through their spine. Asuma, who snapped out of his shock, smirked. "Oh? You think you can take us for fools with your puny bluff? Don't y-dash. Suetun, Swahachi." A voice interrupted their argument as a fairly powerful jet of water washed over the flames, causing a good amount of steam to rise up from it. As the mist started to settle down, the Konohanines widened their eyes in shock at who was in front of them. Finally, he spoke. "Nah, Zabuza-chan, you're quite busy over here." The former ANBU grunted at the statement in annoyance as he addressed the figure. "It's been a long time. Few minutes ago, in the trees, Team 9 were quite interested when they saw someone using the famous Mokutan. They noticed their gun-by user teammate was trembling even more in excitement, and they knew it was time to initiate their mission." Excitement was actually an understatement. His blood was pumping at such speeds that he was afraid that he would get a heart attack at any time now. As May finished relaying specific orders to her students, as the mission had changed a bit with the newcomers, they moved, and she went through a chain of hand seals. The auburn-haired woman didn't notice the insane grin on the young Uchiha's face, or she just decided to ignore it. "Let's go." Present time. At the bridge. Hashigaki Kisame. I said in the last chapter that everyone was forgetting about someone. In the original anime, he sided with Madara, but here, since Madara didn't meet or offer him a deal, he just left Kirigakure. Kisame has always been one of my favorite characters in the anime, so it was mandatory that I had to bring him. Kakashi snapped out of his shock as his mind was racing through several plans per second. This changed everything. Though he was still quite confident that Asuma and Tenzo were able to defeat Kisame alone, he and Anko would take on Zabuza and his companion. Fortunately, his students took the bridge builder out of the battlefield, or they would just get in the way. "I've replenished my chakra. I can move now." The shark-skinned man gazed over their enemies and addressed his former swordsman teammate. "Nah, this will be quite a difficult battle, but me and Samahata have been hitching for a fight for some time. This will prove to be interesting." Everyone tensed as he finished his statement, but before they could move, a huge shadow loomed over them, and everyone tilted their heads upwards. They didn't have time to be shocked and amazed as a massive torrent of lava washed over where they were standing. Yotan, Yokai no Jutsu. As they turned their gazes to the side, a different chain of reactions crossed everyone's face. Zabuza paled. "I'm screwed." Kisame chuckled. "Now, this just got much interesting." Konoha, although were in shock, not because of someone using a strong and rare Kekii Genkai, but for other reason. An Uchiha, in Kirigakure. Black hair with an auburn tint on it. That armor. He's the Jigaku no Shonin? They were broke out of their thoughts as a melodic voice spoke. My. Were you planning to start playing without us?" Zazukoin. A sickly sweet smile crossed her lips as Zabuza paled even further, if that was possible, ignoring the damn pet name she used to call him. His companion, although, was looking over the black-haired man in their group, sensing the strong presence he was emitting. A small blush spread on her cheeks, and she thanks that her mask is still on. The same boy that she was gazing to stepped forward, his three-tomoed Sharingan boring into a specific man's soul, as he lifted his pointing towards him. You, follow me. Now, his insane grin, coupled with the amount of chakra he was emitting plus the spinning red eyes, made them involuntarily take a step aback. His blood was boiling. His body was hitching for a dance. Although he had a feeling that he was going to be disappointed in the end, he turned his murderous eyes to the man that took a step forward. Said man inhaled and breathed a good amount of smoke before replying, "Kid, this is not child's game. Do you really think I would let him go anywhere by himself?" Without any hesitation, he grunted, "Chin. Fine, you can come as well." They had to do a double take, but when he saw him vanishing, they followed suit. Mei, who was watching the whole scene, was about to follow her student as well when a voice interrupted her for taking action. "Don't worry, I'll go and make sure he doesn't die." Mei smiled and nodded her head to the swordsman before his body turned into water, and with a splash he vanished. Mizu Shunshin. Her beautiful green eyes turned cold as she turned to her imminent opponents alongside a man. They were being watched from the sidelines by the genins of both teams, as they didn't want to miss this battle. And a certain raven-haired boy with an arrogant smirk on his face who had just woke up was drooling at the thought of copying jutsus. Thank God, he didn't get to feel the power flowing through the other Uchiha until it was too late. Few miles from the bridge, Naruto and Kisame versus Yamato/Tenzo and Asuma. He had his arms crossed over his chest. The wind was blowing his waist-length bare, with shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right eye. He was wearing a midnight blue armor with numerous metal plates, forming protective guards along his chest, waist, shoulders, and thighs. Strapped to his back was his father's legacy, an orange-brown gunbai, which had a long black chain running up it, and finally his sword strapped on his waist. After a few seconds, the party graced with their presence as one of the mans appeared on his side. Said man grabbed the hilt of the massive sword strapped on his back as he brought it in front of him, smashing the ground as multiple scales came out of the bandages. "So, this is the famous Samahata." This was everyone's thought as the shark skin man spoke. "So, shall we start?" His only response was a movement on his left side as he watched slightly amused the boy already holding up a hand seal as Samahata trembled with excitement at the teen's massive chakra input. The boy puffed his cheeks and expelling several dragon-headed fireballs at a decent speed towards their opponents. He immediately took action, running towards them. Kisame followed him as his interest in the boy spiked, watching him taking the enemy head-on. "Just the way I like." Katan, Ryu and Hoka no Jutsu. Both Konohanins were still slight disturbed seeing an Uchiha outside of Konoha. When the Uchiha clan gets wind of this, it will bring many problems in the future. They needed to take him out and bring him back alive if possible. Yamato clapped his hands as an wood wall sprouted from the ground, protecting them. Mokutan Mokujihiki. The fire collided with the wood, almost breaking it, as the ENBU captain gritted his teeth for wasting more chakra than necessary to sustain the wall. Asuma, seeing his opponent on his way, immediately went through his hand seals, expanding his chest as he inhales a good amount of air and breathing a massive stream of hot fire towards the Uchiha. Katan, Karyu, Enden. As the flamethrower was coming on their way, Naruto stopped on his tracks, going through his own hand signs, finishing at the same time as Kisame, and both shouted in unison. Suetun, Hahanryu/Futon, Kami Oroshur. Go Fusuka no Jutsu. I know it's supposed to be combined with a Rasengan, but Kami Oroshur is a jutsu that generates a whirling vortex, which basically causes the same effect as the first form of the Rasengan, rotation. Both techniques merged together, creating massive typhoon of water who completely destroyed the stream of fire and kept going at tremendous speeds. Yamato started to build up a large amount of chakra as a rolls of sweat was visible on his forehead, and as he clapped his hands, several wood branches came out of the ground, interfacing with each other and forming a net-like wall. Mokutan, Jukai Heki. The Yanbiyu gave a nod to his companion, who leaped away as he pushed even more chakra, where now several trees shot out of the ground towards their opponents, who were now visible, shocked at what they were seeing. Mokutan Hijitsu, Jukai Koten. Naruto, who saw his father using the same jutsu against him, could easily tell that whoever this guy is didn't come even close to the mastery over the Mokutan element that Madara showed. Makes me think what type of monster was Senju Hashirama. He was snapped out of his thoughts as Kisame started to cut every tree that came in his way with his precious Samahata. He was about to help him when his sensor abilities screamed in danger, and his Sharingan instantly picked up the movement on his side, With a gracious move, he brought his gunbai to the side as a punch coated with wind chakra collided with the large fan. Futon, Senpuken. Asuma had a surprised look as he gritted his teeth. How? My fist should have at least make a dent. There's not even a single scratch on it. He was brought out of his thoughts as the gunbai was glowing white as if it had absorbed the impact. You're a fool for trying to take me head on. Now I shall return that to you. Yuka Higeshi. Converting the chakra absorbed, Naruto positioned the fan in Asuma's direction, who was still in midair. A massive explosion of chakra hit the older man head-on, sending him backwards. He didn't have time to rest, as a huge torrent of lava was coming his way. What is with this kid? Yotan, Yogan Arashur. He made the only thing he could in that situation. He replaced himself with a log. Kawarimi no Jutsu. The bearded man took a deep breath, coughing some blood as he looked over the other battles. Yamato was already low on chakra as he was barely standing after Kisame shoved his Samahata on his shoulder. Kakashi and Anko had several burnings and cuts all over their body, and their opponents looked as good as new. Looking over his opponent again, he could barely hid his surprise as the young Uchiha seemed like didn't break a sweat, which made him mad. He knew this was a lost battle. He needed to retreat and regroup with everyone. He was cut out of his thoughts as the black-haired boy spoke. I'm disappointed. You're a jounin from Konoha, and you can barely hold a candle against me. You tripped in your own steps while dancing. He watched as the Kirigakure Genin lifted his finger, pointing at him. As he continued, you're disappointing. Suddenly several earth and water spears impaled him out of nowhere, and he screamed in pain as blood exploded from his wounds, and the last thing he saw was Kakashi, Yamato, and Anko also getting impaled before darkness claimed him. Tsh. He wasn't even able to see through my Utakata Jinjutsu. He was snapped out of his musings as Kakashi, Yamato, and Anko jumped to where Asuma was lying. They checked all the blood dripping from his multiple wounds. Anko was about to rush the brat for killing one of his friends when the Greyite stopped her. Don't Anko, he got caught in a Jinjutsu, a strong one it seems. Caught, placing a hand over Asuma's shoulder and canceling the foreign chakra in his body. He watched as the tall man slowly opened his eyes and took on his surroundings. Kakashi, Yo, Mei, Zabuza, and Kisame appeared on Naruto's side as the shark man whistles. You certainly did a good number on him, Gaki. The Uchiha just crossed his arms over his chest and grunted a Hachin before looking over 4 more figures making themselves known. He raised an eyebrow, seeing a fan symbol displayed on a raven-haired boy. The boy in question, feeling a gaze on him, looked over who the hell thought could watch him without begging for permission. He found culprit, and his eyes immediately turned bloody red eyes with a tomo on his right eye and 2 tomos on his left eye. Oh boy, he was furious. With an arrogant and murderous tone, he spoke. Dobe, who do you think you are for stealing my clan's precious Sharingan, huh? Kakashi was about to shut him the hell up, but was cut out. Your clan? Naruto asked as his eyebrow had raised even more at the arrogance of his kin. Kakashi was about to speak, but was interrupted again. Sasuke team, leave him be. Naruto looked over the blonde-haired guy who wore an horrendous orange jumpsuit, as he seemed to be the only one to have some brains. He's just another weakling wannabe ninja. I'm Namake's Menma, the next Hokage Databayo. He pumped his fist in the air as he proclaimed that. Or maybe not. Kakashi, gritting his teeth, was about to try to speak again, but another fucker interrupted him. Clap, clap, clap. Naruto and the rest turned their gazes over the imbecile who was clapping just to look down on a short fat man surrounded by what appear to be bandits. The fat man finished his clapping and spoke. Momochi Zabuza, the famous Kirigakure no Kijin, couldn't kill some brats, and now I have to do your job. Oh well, I wasn't going to pay you anyway. Zabuza was about to speak when he heard footsteps coming from his side. He tilted his head, watching as the young Uchiha kept walking in the bandit's direction. You're a nuisance. It was barely a whisper, but everyone in the bridge heard it. He kept walking. Oh, what a runt like you is going to do against 300 of us? You should stop playing heroes. Naruto ignored his words as some unknown energy was flowing through him. He involuntarily brought his hand to the hilt of his blade. A pure white energy washed over him before everything went black. Mindscape, fire, flames. The temperature was immeasurable, but he didn't feel anything. He never felt this good actually. He took a look on his surroundings, but that was just it. Flames, fire. It was barely a whisper, but he was sure he heard it. Can you? He spun around, but just found more flames. Who's there? He gritted his teeth as he was getting impatient and kind of annoyed. And never messed with Uchiha Naruto when annoyed. So you can't hear me? at last. His annoyance grew, but he answered nonetheless. Yes, I can hear you. Just barely, but I can. Who and where are you? Ryu. Ka. Ryujin. Jack Jean Ka. Jacka. His mind was burning as it raced through many conclusions. It is telling me its name. Karyu Kaya. Jinka Ryu. Kajin Ryuka. Are you Ryujin Jacka? A flash of white was his immediate answer as his mindscape practically turned upside down, as instead of all the flames there was only white. Everything was white. I'm not going to complain about being crushed by Sensei's breasts anymore, jeez. Whose breasts? A gruff voice broke out of his thoughts, or more like read his thoughts, as he looked over his shoulder and was surprised to see an old man with red eyes, a very long white beard, and long eyebrows. There were many scars on his torso and head, the two most prominent being a pair of long, perpendicular scars above his right eye. He was wearing a black kimono and white haori draped over his back. Naruto's eyebrow twitched at the question. Greetings, young Naruto. I'm glad you're finally able to hear me, as I've been trying for the last few years. A flashback of him in the bridge as he remembers an unknown energy flowing through him. It was his sword. Oh, maybe you're not so bad as I expected. A snort was heard, much to the old man's amusement. So, to important matters. I'm a Zanpakuto. The Zanpakuto's spirit reflects on our master abilities as well as his appearance, so who's your master? The old man pointed his finger in Naruto's direction. Then why do you look like a crippled man that looks like is about to die anytime? The old man shrugged and replied in a nonchalant tone, don't know. I didn't want you to freak out if I just showed myself looking exactly as you. Nonetheless, I'll explain you everything about me, how to release and how to use your Zanpakuto to its full capabilities. Now, don't interrupt me. At the bridge, everyone watched intrigued as the young Uchiha suddenly stopped on his tracks, as if looked like he was in some sort of trance. Sasuke, being Sasuke, said, Look, the dope finally realized how we dash. He stopped what he was saying as Naruto continued on his tracks. A huge smirk plastered on his face. Gato, seeing this, actually took a step back and shouted, What are you doing, morons? Kill him. A chorus of agreement was heard as everyone tensed their muscles and brought their diverse weapons such as katanas, axes, hammers, spears, and a boomerang. The genin brought his still glowing sword in front of him, and everyone noticed the change in the atmosphere as it was becoming harder to breathe. Everyone was snapped out of their thoughts as a chanting was heard. Bansho Isai Kaijin to Nace, Ryujin Jacka, reduce all creation to ash, Ryujin Jacka, a simple swing, and then all hell broke loose. A raging blaze inferno, as a massive wide-spread wave of fire was unleashed from the unique, blazing sword. Everyone could feel the heat the wave was emitting. Their skin burned, and they weren't even close nor the target of that inferno. All the bandits, included Gato, sweated as they knew this would be the end. They had already dropped their weapons and were about to just jump to the river, but a huge roar caught their attention, and when they turned around, every single one of them paled as the wave picked up its speed and was already upon them. They did the only thing they could. They screamed. 10 minutes later, both Konoha, Kirigakure, and Missing Means had their eyes widened in shock. Asuma was actually pale because he knew what had he just escaped. Team 9 and their sensei were amazed by the power their teammate and friend just unleashed. If he was a beast before, what is he now? Even Mei was turned on by this. My, such power. Maybe I should just eat him. Kisame and Samahata were drooling for different reasons. The former because he had just found a play toy to spar, and the latest was actually lipping her lips at the energy and chakra she was feeling. Yes, same as a girl. The pairing will be Naruto Samahata, Houm. Just joking. Zabuza was smirking, and the hunter Nin was curious about this enigma that was the Uchiha. She had to talk with him, so see his resolve in life. Sasuke and the blonde-haired were furious and jealous. Everyone could have sworn they heard someone shouting, he stole that sword from Sasuke-kun. But they ignored it as it didn't make any sense. Even after 10 long minutes, the flames were still burning. Even the river couldn't put it down. The bridge was completely destroyed, and the bridge builder would probably need to relocate the bridge. A nonchalant voice snapped out of their thoughts. Mission completed, I guess. Winds that shift the balance. 6 months later. It's been roughly 6 months since his mission in Nami no Kuni. The villagers residing in Kirigakure, both shinobis and civilians alike, have been ecstatic about 2 legends in their own right returning to their home. Even the daimyo from Mizu no Kuni started to give the proper help in financial matters, due mostly to the abolishment of the rude final test in the academy, but mainly because of the fact that Kirigakure no Sato, is well on their way to be back to their full glory. Glory. There's no glory in climbing a mountain if all you want to do is to get to the top. It's experiencing the climb itself, in all its moments of revelation, heartbreak, and fatigue. That has to be the goal if anyone wants to have a taste of success. Success is to be measured not by wealth, power, or fame, but by the ration between what a shinobi is and what he might be. Many became arrogant just because they had money to spend as they wished. Others became power-hungry fools and died because of that greed. Others lost themselves in fame. Many people don't realize the price and the responsibilities that comes with glory, success, and fame. It gathers a lot of unwelcome attention. One might say that you should be always watching your back, otherwise it will be all over if you let your guard down, just for a split of a second. And Naruto knew this. Words had spread out all over the world about an unknown Uchiha who's been living in Kirigakure for many years and has made a name for himself, being now dubbed as the Kirigakure no Akuma. And he was only 14. Every single Kage knew what this meant. The balance of power was shifting. The inclusion of the Kirigakure no Kaijin, Hoshigaki-kisms, as well as the Kirigakure no Kijin, Momochi Zabuza in their ranks had bestowed them a great amount of power and popularity. Small countries started to request their services, consequently giving them enough money, making them able to develop their technologies such as the armory, new weapons, and battle-oriented ships. The old glory days, the king of seas, and they were returning. This was troubling for the other nations, as they knew from history how ruthless they were when at full capacity. No one would dare to instigate them. So if they wanted to put a stop in this, they would need to do something about this situation before it could have any repercussions on them. They needed to prove themselves superior. Thus, everyone came to the same conclusion. Present time. Kirigakure no Sato, Mizuki's office, chunin exams. A blue-haired boy repeated more to himself, as if tasting the words. Hosted by Konoha, a feminine voice belonging to a dark red-haired continued. Yes. The stern voice of their Mizuki confirmed what they heard. Everyone was stealing glances at the quiet black-haired man in the room, as this was big yet troubling news. They were not naive. They knew that every nation heard about the powerful boy who possessed not one, but two very strong Kekkei Genkais who was currently living in Kirigakure, and that single-handedly crushed an entire army of 300 bandits with some unknown jutsu. Not just that, but the fact that it was being hosted by Konoha, where resides the Uchiha clan. There was going to be a fuss when the time comes. They just knew it. Troublesome indeed. When do we leave? Asked a beautiful auburn-haired woman, as she knew it wasn't going to do any good thinking about this matter right now. Sighing, Yagura replied, "The exams are starting next week, so you have to leave in 3 days so you can arrive 1 day before it starts. I'll be there for the third part along with my bodyguards Kisame and Zabuza. Oh, and Amigakure, Kusagakure, a new village called Otogakure, Takigakure, Sunagakure, and finally Kumagakure are also sending their best Genin teams to participate in the exam. Iwagakure is not in the list for obvious reasons, as it seems Oanoki still holds a grudge on Namikaze Minato. Be ready, and good luck to you all. I'll be seeing you all in the finals." You're all dismissed except for Naruto. With the choruses of "Hi," Team 9 sent a worried glance to their teammate before leaving the office. As soon as they left, Yagura started to speak. "You know what this means, right?" The midnight blue armored boy folded his arms over his chest and hummed a bit before replying, "The other nations are apprehended because of our significant increase of power as of lately, plus the timing of this exams are not just a mere coincidence. This could be their opportunity to show that our boost in power is still not enough to compare to them, but it could also prove their downfall, as there will be many foreigners from other small countries to watch the future generation. Thus, you're asking me to win the whole tournament. Am I right?" A small smile graced the Mizuki's lips before replying, "I guess I didn't need to be concerned after all. Though don't let your guard down, as there are always shadows looming around waiting for their chance." A smirk was his response. 6 days later, Kanahagakure no Sato, Northwest Gates. The journey was uneventful for the only teams sent by Kirigakure. Two of the Genins were starting to get nervous as the gates were getting closer and closer. As for the last member of their group, his blood was starting to pump in excitement. He always loved a good dance. His thirst for battles was insatiable. He just hoped that these runs could at least follow some of his steps. If the music proved to be too fast for some of them, oh well, I guess I'll just have to separate some heads from their shoulders. He was snapped out of his musings as his activated 3-tomoed Sharingan picked up 2 Chakiya signatures nearby the gate. Guards. Indeed they were, as they confirmed and showed their authorization and documents. Team 9 was instantly aware of the flares sent their way. Curiosity, rage, awe, lust, and betrayal? Naruto shook his head at the last one. Fools. As they were about to enter the hotel they were staying, the Uchiha stated that he was going to amuse himself and explore a bit of his clan's village. They protested, but to no avail, though Mei made sure to send a Kage Bunshin that Naruto taught and explained his usefulness to follow him. So without anything else he departed, but firstly he had to look for some place to eat. 10 minutes later, he found it. Though he never tried before, it sure as hell smelled good. Ichiraku ramen. Taking a sit on a stool in the corner, he took a quick look on the menu and hummed in thought at the variously typed of plates. Hello? Could I get a beef ramen, please? A shout of Roger was his response as he took the place in, analyzing the people inside of the small restaurant, but another voice snapped out of his thoughts. You're that guy we met in Nami. He growled at the volume of the voice and was about to scold whoever said that, but someone beat him to it. Oi, where are your manners, Mr. Menma? Apologize in this instant, Tebane. The Uchiha turned his gaze to the side and was about to wave it off when Green met Purple Eyes. They were looking at each other for what it seemed like eternity when a voice broke them of their stupor. Don't ignore me. And why are you looking at my mother like that, Databeo? The gunbai wielder kept ignoring the brat as he was petrified by the goddess that easily rivaled that of Mei. Not that he would ever admit it out loud, and Pakura in front of him. He didn't have many girlfriends, though that didn't mean he wasn't ignorant about this matters. Uzumaki Kushina also didn't know how to react. This was too confusing. She felt attracted to this man's eyes and the power he was emitting. She was the best censor in Konoha on the same level as her ancestor, Mito. And boy, she could tell this young man had massive chakra reserves, but it was its density that surprised her. It dwarfed her own. Blasphemy. She knew she was attracted to power, just like every other serious kunoichi. Her husband was the proof. That and the fact that he saved her. Maybe she could kidnap him just for some tiawo wo. Stop right there, Kushina. But God, he's hot, and maybe I stop. For her relief, someone snapped her out of her thoughts, though to her dismay, it was the same person that was invading her mind. I'm sorry, Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina. Oh, Kushina, as in the Akai Chishio no Habanero. Yes. She was kind of curious on how he knew about her ex-moniker, as she only got back to the shinobi forces 1 year ago. And it seemed as if the stories of her prowess were forgotten with the years. My name is Uchiha Terumi Naruto. Terumi, you say? Hi. I have to go now, but I would like to talk with you. Maybe after the second part of the chunin exams? Heir. Sure. After leaving some money on the counter, he bid her a see you later, vanishing in a torrent of black flames. He had picked her interest. She was glad that Minato was busy with all the arrangements for the exam, or else she was going to hear the end of it. She was so entranced in her thoughts that she almost missed her son whining. What was that all about, Kachan? The winds blowed her long red hair, a small smile gracing her lips before replying. Nothing. Nothing at all. 1 day later, Konoha's academy. As Team 9 entered the room, they were met with glares coupled with some killing intents, although all that stopped as everyone noticed the black hair, then the red, 3-tomoed eyes, the midnight blue armor, and finally the gunhai strapped to his back. They all shut their mouths. Soon the murmuring started, though Naruto and his team just didn't care and lined up to some random wall as the former analyzed the strongest ones in the room. The Uchiha folded his arms over his chest, raising an eyebrow as he gazed over a blonde woman, a red-haired boy, a minted green-haired girl. He missed the furious glares from another 2 Uchihas, or he just didn't care. The Uchiha massacre was stopped by the Yondaime. Their chakra is similar to that of Mizukage-sama, Utakata-san, and Kushina-san. Oh, so they are Jinchurikis as well, though it seems like the blonde and the red-haired are weaker, and judging for their hideouts, the boy possessed the Ichibi, and the girl has Nibi seal inside her. The former is leaking tons of bloodlust, and the latter has way more control. An emotional wrecked brat and a perfect Jinchuriki? Interesting. The girl from Takigakure, which if I'm not mistaken has the Nanabai, is too fragile and young, so she probably can't stand too much of its corrosive chakra before it goes berserk. They weren't kidding if this is the way they want to prove themselves. He was snapped out of his thoughts as his ears picked up some voices nearby the doors. Uchiha Terumi Naruto. Naruto turned his gaze over a familiar mop of blonde hair, who was talking to a gray-haired teenager. That's Kushina and Yandame's son. He was curious when that boy took a random card and pushed some chakra into it. Naruto noticed the slight widened in the boy's eyes and immediately narrowed his own red eyes as he heard a particular sentence before snapped his fingers. 40 D ranks, 71 C ranks, 12 B ranks, 2 A ranks and 1 S rank. Impressive. His taijutsu, ninjutsu, kenjutsu are off ch. Snap. The card lit on fire, giving the boy named Kabuto some nasty burn on his fingers. The people who were paying close attention to the information widened their eyes in surprise, and some others narrowed them to the Uchiha, who still had his arms folded with an impassive look, but inwardly his mind was racing through many possibilities. That's too much information for a simple genin. I wouldn't mind until he said that S-ranked mission. That was the training trip with my father, and it should be a village secret, as only my mother and the Mizukage has the knowledge of it, and the mission is not even recorded. He's pretty much a spy, but there's more to it as those cards of his contain several informations about everyone present, so that means he's working for or with someone that has a large spy network. While he was busy on his train of thoughts, he missed the attack of 3 Otoge Kurnins on Kabuto, who said something disrespectful about them. But it all stopped as the proctor stomped the room and shouting about maggots and exam starting. 10 hours later, both the writing and the second part of the exam that took place in the Shirnomori, Forest of Death, were easy. It didn't even give them a challenge. A black-haired girl from a team sent by Amigakure claiming to be Hanzo's daughter. Akatsuki in this FIC is made of mercenaries just like in the anime before Toby came in. They were hired by Hanzo, but in this story they stayed permanently and are now a branch division of Amigakure's ANBU, instead of being betrayed by Hanzo after Danzo's offer. I'll bring Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan later on. Don't worry. Had challenged Naruto, saying it was her father's orders to test his power and see if the rumors were true, or if he was just another fool using the fame to mask his flaws. Flashback. Are you ready? With an amazing synchronized sigh, Team 9 went to their respective battle stances as their opponents started to run towards them head-on. With another synced raise eyebrows, they went through a chain of hand seals as Chojuro using a single scroll with the kanji 4 water for support for his technique. Pushing chakra on it, a torrent of water explodes from it before clapping his palms and shaping it into a spiraling vortex who explodes from the top in the form of a wave, changing the entirety battlefield. Suetun, Swishoha. Their opponents just had time to jump backwards, standing on the water using chakra. They widened their eyes in shock as Ringo had slammed her palms in the water and discharged a huge amount of electricity that run through their bodies. Raitun, Horyu Raika. They were gritting their teeth at the ease their opponents immobilized them, and now were at their mercy. A large cloud of superheated ash came out of Naruto's mouth, enveloping them, and a large part of the field, who was enjoying the looks of horror and painful screams from the burnings the ash was causing. The last thing they would see was Naruto clicking his teeth, igniting the stagnant ash, and a massive explosion rocketed through the area before everything went black. Katon, Hazuki show. That was fun. They sweat dropped at the red-haired comment before taking the scroll from the uncautious if not death team and vanishing a second later. Flashback end. They were the first to arrive at the tower, not that they expected anything less, and with that they went to their own rooms. At the tower, arena, it didn't surprise Naruto that many of these teams he was observing had passed. He wanted to fight at least one of the present Jinchurikis as they possessed a good endurance, so it made him able to test some jutsus without killing them. The Uchiha noticed many eyes on him coming from the Jounin platform. There he saw Mei who winked at him, making his eyebrow twitch. Many Konoha and other villages Jounins, probably senseis of the teams that had passed. He also saw the famous Sandame Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and his teammate Shinobi no Yami, Shimura Danzo, who was looking at him like he was a piece of meat. Naruto also noticed an Uchiha with Jounin uniform glaring furiously at him and put 2 and 2 together. So he's the Uchiha clan head. Better give him a warm welcome. He put on his father's smirk and whisper and "I'm not impressed," which only Jounins and Kages, Minato and Hiruzen, heard. Needless to say, Fugaku got beyond furious as he started leaking enough killing intent and hatred that would make even Sasuke turned on. Minato saw this and coughed, so he could start explaining the next part of the exams. Missing the wink, Kushina sent Naruto for putting the Uchiha head in his place. Few hours later, Naruto was bored. God, He wanted to destroy something right now. The battles were pitiful, especially that one with pink hair against a blonde-haired girl. They just kept babbling about their lover, Sasuke-kun. What the hell was going on? There were some exceptions, though, as the Jinchurikis were actually very good, especially the blonde girl who held an aura of confidence. He loved that. The Yodame's brat was a surprise. Despite that little episode in Nami no Kuni where he had been arrogant, he was actually an humble man with skills. He had beaten that Inazuka brat quite easily. Well, if you're apprenticed by Jiraiya no Gama-Sunin, you can't be weak. But it was finally his turn, and much to his annoyance, it was already the last battle. Oh well, at least he had a nice rest. Everyone had a shocked look as they saw the names fixed on the machine, as they had forgotten who still had to fight. A hidden smirk displayed on Fugaku and Orochimaru, who was disguised as an Odo Jounin. The former waiting for his son to trash that traitor Uchiha, and the latter because he knew something was about to happen in this fight. Uchiha Naruto versus Uchiha Sasuke versus Uchiha Amato. Flames engulfed his body. A second later, he was in the middle of the arena with his arms crossed and lazily looking over his opponents who had already jumped over the railing. Sasuke and Amato had an arrogant smirks on their faces as they nodded to each other, sending a hidden message which Naruto noticed and raised his perfectly shaped black eyebrow. They are teaming up on me. This dance just got a lot more interesting. The proctor stepped forward, looking over the three Uchihas, and seeing they were ready, "Hey," said Hajime, immediately vanishing from the spot, as two medium fireballs that combined with each other creating a bigger one was sent on Naruto's direction. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, /Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Naruto was not impressed. His own fireball dwarfed their combined one. He saw them activate their Sharingan. He almost laughed at the attempt to copy his techniques. Even the clan head was doing the same. Pity. Naruto could have just unsealed the gunbai that was sealed on his right wrist because he didn't want the Uchihas to notice the similarities with Madara's gunbai. The black-haired teen just smirked and made a lone hand seal, building up chakra and puffing his chest. Fugaku, Sasuke, and Amato noticed this and fumed for not being able to copy it, but the last two had other things to worry about, as an enormous dragon head-shaped fireball, which not just collided, but destroyed the large fireball. Katan, Goryuka no Jutsu. Both Uchihas leaped to the side, and that was what Naruto wanted as he went through a sequence of hand seals, which made Mei smile as she knew what was about to happen. She was the one who taught him this little but deadly jutsu. Everyone will find it small, but what they don't understand is the amount of chakra that it has. The only possible way is to escape. This runs can't dream to block this baby. Yotan, Okabona Neppa. Naruto breathed a torrent of lava that took form of a small wave. Both Uchihas were quite afraid as they forgot the information they received about the traitor. Nevertheless, they went through the same hand seals. They were going to fight this lava with fire. On the stands, Namake's Minato was impressed. He used the same principles of Nidame's Suishoha and created for his own element. This foreign Uchiha had tons of potential, maybe even more than him. Too bad he was born in Kirigakure. He didn't care if he was from another country, as it was not the boy's fault for being born there. Of course, the Uchihas wanted nothing more to kill the traitor, even if they didn't have any fundamental reason. The young Hokage didn't allow that. These exams were very important to the future, as there would be daimyos from all over the elemental nations. There couldn't be any problems. The problem was Danzo. The old war hawk was adamant in kidnapping him, or at least kill him, and get his eyes removed. The Namakes had strictly prohibited him from touching the young Uchiha, or he would make sure to kill Danzo himself. After calling his so-called Hokage a fool, he left the room to prepare for the incoming invasion. With Orochimaru fighting that fool, I'll have enough time to kill the brat and take his eyes. I failed with sure sway, but I won't fail a second time. Nevertheless, he watched as the foreign Uchiha dominated the battle calmly, as if he was already sure that he would be the winner. Kushina and the rest had also surprising looks as this was 2 against 1, and it seemed as if they were about to be crushed as mere ants. Everyone was snapped out or their thoughts by an unusual high-pitched scream. Be careful, Sasuke Kun. Back in the arena, Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, /Katan, Karyuden. 2 shouts followed by a flamethrower spewed from Sasuke's mouth, and several medium fireballs from the other, which clashed with the small, but extremely hot wave. It gave time for Sasuke to leap away, but Amato was too slow, and he got third-degree burns on half of his body. A high painful scream followed the explosion of lava. Sasuke, who has seen everything in slow motion with his Sharingan imprinting the process, had a murderous expression on his face, and looking at the impassive face of the boy in front of him only enraged him even more. When he heard his annoying teammate shouting, he looked over that spot, and behind her he locked eyes with Kakashi. An evil smirk crossed his lips as he remembered something he copied 6 months ago. He went through some hand seals. A murderous look crossed a gray-haired man. Chidori. The sound of chirping birds made Naruto raise an eyebrow, analyzing every single detail about this jutsu with his Sharingan. He noticed the disgusted face of Kakashi, and realization hit him upon seeing the drops of sweat on Sasuke's face. You're using something that you didn't ask permission for, and worse than that is the fact that you haven't tried to master it. This is your second or third time using this jutsu. I can also see that it's not even close to be completed. You disgust me, Uchiha, and for that, you shall learn. Sasuke sneered, "Shut up, traitor. I'm going to kill you with this." The duck-shaped haired boy started to run, his Sharingan madly spinning towards the other Uchiha. Naruto clapped his hands, building an enormous amount of chakra, and as he starts to move his hands apart, between the palms a basketball-sized ball with black flames danced. Everyone could feel the amount of chakra compressed inside the ball. It made even the Hokage sweat. Enten, a Shukuin Kagetsuchi. They clashed their respective jutsus with each other. A loud boom followed by a massive explosion of black flames, and smoke was the result of it. The arena shook a little before a painful scream snapped everyone out of their shock. When the smoke cleared, everyone noticed the burns on Sasuke's arms, and even on his chest as the shirt was burned to crisp. To the surprise of Naruto, he was still conscious, though he noticed some weird black marks spreading all over his body. Raising an eyebrow at the sudden increase in his chakra, he analyzed this new situation as his blood was starting to pump. On the stands, a wicked grin split Orochimaru's face, which went unnoticed by everyone. "Good, Sasuke-kun. Give yourself to the hatred that is plaguing your heart." Fugaku was fuming because of Sasuke's incompetence at destroying this punk. It just proved that he couldn't be compared to his older brother. Upon seeing the strange black markings, he was literally disgusted at his son for using someone's power, though he filled that for later, as at least he could accidentally kill this traitor. Anko, who knew everything about the Juinjutsu, was about to jump to stop the battle when a powerful and angelic voice stopped her. "Don't." The Jounins turned their gaze towards Team 9's sensei, who surprisingly was smiling. Upon seeing their questioning looks, she continued, "Naruto will beat him with ease. Just watch the show, and don't you dare to interfere with my students' fight." Anko and some other Genins were about to protest when a maniacal laughing stopped them. They all turned to the arena. In the arena, "Ahaha. Yes, with this I'll kill you. And then I'll easily surpass my brother." Naruto kept his impassive look before unfolding his arms and tensing his muscles as he went to battle stance. He opened his mouth. "So, let's take up a notch in our little dance, shall we?" He vanished. Sasuke had only time to widen his eyes before he bended over. A good amount of blood came out of his mouth, as a powerful knee hit his stomach, followed by a foot found his right cheek that sent him crashing on the wall. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The sound of shurikens alerted him from the incoming attack. He was about to dodge using his Sharingan, but the 10 deadly objects suddenly quadrupled. His Sharingan picked up the movement of his opponent, clapping his hands. Futon, Rapusho. Wind compressed and transformed into a powerful gale that doubled the shuriken's speed. Everything slowed down for Sasuke as he was feeling so much hatred for being hopeless, hatred for being weak, hatred for being unable to beat him. Black markings spread over the other half of his body and started to attach to each other. His skin turned dark gray, and his hair grew and turned dark blue. His eyes also turned dark gray. Additionally, he grew web-claw-shaped wings from his back, which he could use to fly and glide, and a dark, star-shaped mark appeared across the bridge of his nose. He quickly used his new wings to cover himself, but he was not prepared for what happened next. Naruto watched the transformation in fascination. He could feel his power, speed, chakra, being doubled. No, tripled. Amazing. He noticed Sasuke using his wings to protect himself. Not enough. The Uchiha moved many of his fingertips, and suddenly the 10 shurikens he threw before changed its direction, as translucent wires were now visible on his fingertips attached to the shurikens. As the lines were now encircling and immobilizing the dark-skinned man, Naruto attached the strings in his mouth, before making a single hand seal as fire exploded around his body, and a second later the flames were launched using the strings as a guide. Katan, Ryuka no Jutsu, another scream, but this one was shorter as he used his burned wings and shook away the flames. He smirked at the power flowing inside of him before glaring at Naruto, an insane bloodlust grin ear to ear that made Gaara or Shikaku aroused. He sped towards Naruto, who noticed the significant increase in speed too late and had only time to block the punch, which sent him almost crushing into a wall just by the sheer force in that punch. He had no time to rest as a large fireball was getting closer at tremendous speeds. Katan, Hinden, Naruto smirked. That's more like it. His Sharingan started to spin widely as if searching for something in his memories. Narrowing his eyes slightly, he sped through hand seals and pumping a little of extra chakra. His cheeks bulged, and a second later, he spitted a large amount of water into the ground as it started to take shape of a large wall, which the fireball collided into, and a massive amount of steam covered the battlefield. Suetun, Suijin Hiki. His smirk never left his lips during the entire process as he jumped into the air, and already knowing his position because of the malevolent chakra, a chain of hand seals were formed under a second as multiple large fireballs were created out of thin air. Katan, Goenka. Everyone in the arena had to hold themselves as a big explosion followed by the arena shaking itself, and the sudden increased temperature in the room had them a little disoriented. As the steam started to disappear, two figures were visible in the middle of the arena. One had his arms crossed with an amused smile on his face. The other was lying on the floor. He had multiple burns all over his body, which was still dark, but those were from the burns and not the Juinjutsu anymore. He was unconscious, and the room was silent for almost a minute before the proctor was broke out of his stupor and declared the winner. Shosha, Uchiha Naruto. The room went quiet for another minute as the proctor finally coughed for the 12th time in less than a minute, which was starting to annoy Naruto. He explained everything about the next and final stage as everyone needed to take a piece of paper to see who they were up against. Namake's Menma 10, Sabaku no Temari 3, Sabaku no Gaara 1, Fu 5, Nara Shikamaru 4, Sabaku no Kankuro 2, Aburame Shino 6, Hyuga Niji 9, Amuri Ringo 8, Uchiha Naruto 11, Chojuro 7, Yujito 12. Alright, here is the map. Sabaku no Gaara versus Kankuro, Temari versus Shikamaru, Fu versus Shino, Chojuro versus Ringo, Niji versus Menma, Naruto versus Yujito. You got 1 month to prepare yourselves. Good luck, and see you then. Dismissed. As everyone started to leave the room, Naruto called out Kushina after seeing the Yondaime vanishing in a yellow flash. She complied, walking towards him. Hello, Kushina-san. Mama, just Kushina, Tebane. She clapped her mouth, noticing the slip and cursing herself. There was a small smile on the Uchiha's lips. Fine. I wanted to ask you if you could train me in Kenjutsu for this month. Kushina was a bit taken aback by the offer, never expecting such offer. She hummed a bit at the pros and cons. She could teach a prodigy at least in ninjutsu, as that was the only thing he showed so far, though she heard the rumors about some technique he used with his sword as a medium, and if that was true, then he could probably be very adept to swords, and since at her prime, she was stronger than the Kiri no Shinobigatana's Nananin Shu, and he came strictly to her meant he knew more than just to swing his blade. Her son was probably going to be trained by Erosin, and so, I accept, though I can't see why would you spend an entire month learning how to properly wield a sword. Oh my dear, but that's where you're wrong. There's someone else I was looking forward to learn from. As he said that, his eyes moved to a certain corner in the shadows and winked, and he could almost feel the curiosity coming from the person in the shadows, missing the slight blush in the red-haired beauty. Nevertheless, he turned to Kushina, who seemed to notice everything that happened, though she could really feel the emotions ranging from curiosity, confusion, interest, and excitement due to her sensory abilities. Damn, I guess that brat is going to teach this cutie punk. Meet me at 7 a.m. at Heir. Well, I guess we can use the Forest of Death. Is that all right for you? Kushina almost paled at being so close to spiders, snakes, and EW. Oh well, she already agreed with his kin to train him, and this was a good opportunity to get into shape even faster, and she really had nothing to do since there was no missions because of the impending invasion. Jiraiya had already warned her husband about some of the Otogekyure's plans, and its leader, Orochimaru. Minato said something about temporary alliances, but she knew how difficult it was going to be for the other villages to help Konoha. That was one of the reasons she was going to train Naruto. Maybe if she helped him and Mizuki came to know about hers and Naruto's relationship, Kirigakure would be more inclined or willingly to support them. Fine. Be ready, Naruto-kun. He raised an eyebrow at the suffix and for the first time in his life, decided to tease as he spoke in a mock-hurt tone. Era. You wound me for thinking so little of me, Kushi-chan. She flushed at the pet name and decided to leave before she said something she would come to regret. She noticed the sly grin on Naruto's face before vanishing. Jerk. Naruto put on his impassive face and turning around, narrowing his eyes towards a specific spot, and spoke seemingly to no one. So, do you accept training me? There was a minute of silence, and he was about to just leave when the shadow in the corner decided to move. Naruto widened his eyes as a huge fireball was coming his way from behind him. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Such speed, I didn't even see him move. He immediately stomped the floor with his foot beneath him as a thick, large wall of earth exploded from the ground and stopping the fireball. Doton, Dorihiki. Impressive. A whisper behind him made his eyes widen in shock. It was impossible to get behind him without him knowing. And this guy just made it look like toys play. He had no time to move as the tanto that was positioned in front of him slitted his neck. A plume of smoke covered his body. The ENBU turned around, not even slightly surprised about this turn of events. The masked man spoke, nonetheless. You're fast. If it was anyone else, they might have been caught off guard. Your Kage Bunshin was perfectly timed. You're good, very good, but you are still too slow and in a world where you just need 1 second to slit another's throat. Well, I accept training you, but I don't want to hear any complaints or else I'll stop immediately, understood? Naruto let a grunt of acknowledge at the simple yet effective analyze about himself before a small smile came to his lips and answering. Fine. Uchiha Naruto, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. You can call me. Meanwhile, Konohagakure, Hokage's office. Namikaze Minato was behind his desk with his chin over the interlaced fingers as he locked his cold blue eyes with his precious sensei. So, Orochimaru will be disguising himself as the late Sandaime Kazekage, and there's been a lot of movement close to Tsuchi no Kuni? Are you sure about this, Jiraiya-sensei? The spiked, white waist-length man answered in an equal serious tone, yes, Minato. There's a high possibility that they've made a temporary alliance between themselves. Yondaime's mind was racing miles per second looking for some plausible solution, but there was only one that didn't involve Konoha's destruction. He voices his thoughts. We need to speak with Mizuki and Reikage. The latter will probably agree as we have some kind of rivalry and mutual respect. The wild card will be the Mizuki. Jiraiya hummed at the implications before speaking. I guess that's the best idea. I'll have to go now. Your son wants to beat that Hyuga brat pretty badly. Oh well. See you later. As he watched his sensei leaving, he couldn't help but think that the balance of power was about to shift even more for one side. Back in the arena, you can call me Shursue-sensei from now on. There was a grin behind his mask, but his fellow Uchiha couldn't see. Hi Shursue-sensei. We'll meet at 6 p.m. so I can take a small break between Kushina's and your training. The ANBU just shrugged, but inwardly he was curious because he had a feeling that this boy would surprise him in the future. He put those thoughts to the side and spoke in the same monotone before vanishing without any trace. Very well, see you tomorrow. Naruto watched in fascination as he left just like that. He made a fine choice. He was about to leave when someone called behind him. When he turned, his eyes widened in shock, even more when he saw the Amige-kure's haitai strapped around her neck. 1 month later, Konohagakure no Sato. At the stadium, people were still filing the stadium. You could see thousands of foreigners, many of whom had traveled from far away just to watch what would be the best event in the recent years. A chunin exams where you would see shinobis and kunoichis from 4 of the 5 great nations clashing against each other. The best of the best genins. The next generation, daimyos from Hai, Kaze, Kaminari, Mizu, Yuki, Sum, Kiba, Shimo, Cha, Numa, Udon, Yu, Ko, Na, Tori, and finally the newly reinstated Nami no Kuni were also present, each with their respective bodyguards. Merchandisers from every corner of the world were ready to take notes of future prospects for missions and other things. Civilians and shinobis were already eyeing the 12 figures standing in the arena. Every one of them had faces ranging from excitement to slight apprehension. Though, there was one of them that was smirking at a specific direction in the crowd. He had his arms folded over his chest. He was one of the tallest in the group. A spiky, black waist-length hair with shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face. covering most of his right DYD. He was wearing a midnight blue armor with numerous metal plates, forming protective guards along his chest, waist, shoulders, and thigh. A Kirigakure's high strapped around his neck. He was also wearing his father's black gloves. Strapped to his back was Madara's legacy, an orange-brown gunbai, which had a long black chain running up it. And finally, his simple sword strapped on his waist. This was Uchiha Terumi Naruto, son of Uchiha Madara and Terumi Naila. And right now he was smirking at a specific group of people. There was a red-white fan design displayed proudly on each of these people's shirt. Uchiha clan, though, there was everything but proud on their faces. They were right down furious since the moment they saw the person who just not defeated the Uchiha's heir since Itachi didn't want it, but was also wielding one of the relics of their clan. Uchiha Madara's gunbai. No one took the time to notice their similarities, but some would question it in their minds after his match. After amusing himself, Naruto gaze now turned towards another corner of the stadium. Specifically, a woman. She had green hair that was tied in a bun on top of her hair with a needle running through it, and short and long strands of hair with orange tips framing each side of her face. Her attire consisted of a sleeveless, backless top and short tight pants, with 2 lapels on the front and the back. She was wearing an obi around her waist, as well as purple arm warmers which extend up to her shoulders and bandages around her thighs and ankles. An Amage-Cure's high strapped around her neck. HN, it seems you came to watch me after all. Pakura, flashback, Pakura. A smile crossed her lips at the emotions displayed on the young man's face before replying, "It's nice to see you again, Naruto-kun. Though I didn't expect to be on these circumstances." Pakura supported now a huge smirk on her face as she continued. "With me being your superior, as I'm a jounin, and you a mere genin rot. I'm disappointed." Naruto crossed his arms and huffed in annoyance. "Please, woman, you don't hold a candle against me." There was an almost unnoticed twitch on her eyebrows, but Naruto caught it and smirked as she started to speak. "What was that, Lady Emo?" HN. Now there was a vein throbbing her forehead at the simple but effective way to annoy someone. "If you don't star dash. It's nice to see you again too, Pakura. So, none of your students won their matches. Are you leaving already, or will you be staying to watch the finals?" As if their little annoying contest didn't happen at all, her face contorted to a beautiful smile as she answers the young man. "I'm still not sure. I've got to contact Hanzo first, though I'm sure he will want me to search for the one who has killed his daughter that was also participating in this exam." Hanzo's daughter, huh? She narrowed her eyes at the look on his eyes and already knew what was going on. "So, it was you. Well, you can explain everything while we're eating. You're paying." His face had a look that said, "Huh," before he was dragged away to some random restaurant. Flashback end. He wouldn't deny to himself that he indeed had spent a good time with her. At least his body could get a good rest from his intensive training schedule, though the same could not be said about his mind, as he was busy with the constant annoyance that was Pakura. Troublesome woman. He was brought out of his musings as a certain Nara on his side sneezed as the proctor started to speak to everyone present at the stadium. "Welcome to the chunin exams. We hope that everyone is ready for the upcoming matches, as this will be an event to remember for the years to come. Now, without wasting any more time, Namake's Menma versus Hyuganiji." 11 matches later, Naruto had his interest piqued. He couldn't deny that there has been some interesting battles worth to watch. The Uchiha had already analyzed all the strengths and weaknesses from all the hopeful-to-be chunins. After Kankuro had his match forfeited, giving the victory to youngest brother, which had the crowd upset because they wanted to see the Suna's prodigy in action, the next battle proved to be a good clashing between 2 great strategists, although in the end Nara Shikamaru came out victorious, but you could see the reluctance on his face. What no one knew was that his sensei had a long talk with him about the real meaning that this exams had for Konoha's future. The next match was between 2 insect specialists in their own rights, though the hype that the crowd had for being able to watch a Jinchuriki was quickly shut down as Shino forfeited after 10 minutes of trying, but failing on ordering his Kikechus to dry his opponent's chakra. The people in the stadium, especially the foreigners, had nearly drool at the following Kiri's clashdown, both proving to be the right successors for the next generation of the Kiri no Shinobigatanas, one with the Hiramakiri and the other with Kiba. Their Suiton and Raiton ninjutsu were no joke either, and after one last clash that had the stadium literally shaking, both were knocked out with a smile on their faces. Yagura, who was watching the match, intently welcomed all the appraise given from his fellows Kages after the breathtaking battle and agreed with the promotion of both of his genins with a rare smile on his face. They have indeed grown up. The Yandame's only child had delivered quite a beating to the so-called Hyuga prodigy. After analyzing his opponent's absolute defense Kaden and escaped his best offensive technique Jikenho, Hack Rokujian Sho with his favorite Jutsu Kage Bunshin, the young blonde-haired boy had kinda surprised the stadium by unleashing Minato's original jutsu, the Rasengan, completely destroying Hyuga's defense mainly because of its rotation property that had nullified Niji's jutsu, followed by the Hyuga dropping to the ground unconscious, followed by a loud cheering from the local hosts as they were proud at the power shown by their genins, and in their minds there was no doubt that they had found this year's exam's winner, though none of them would be so sure about that after the next fight that was about to start. Kage's booth. They had achieved the top position in their own villages. The peak of the mountain. The many youngsters' dream. They all held the power to make their enemy tremble in fear. One could say just by saying their respective names they would instantly win against whoever tried something on them. Each of them had their own ideology and had their own agenda. But right now, everyone had the same thought running on their minds. This will be interesting. Being the blunt person that everyone already knew, the rakage started. Well, I've been waiting for this match for a while now. I'm sure it will be big, but in the end my little genin will come out on top. She has the power and the high endurance from being a Jinchuriki. Nothing personal Mizukage Dano, but the Kirigakure no Akuma cannot stand against her. The shortest man in the group replied without any hesitation, in an emotionless tone. We will see in the end. We will see. Even in that tone, everyone noticed the confidence those words held. The rakage scoffed, but didn't comment further. It was Orochimaru who was disguised as the Kazekage that spoke next. Hokage Dano. If I'm not mistaken, that's an Uchiha right there. And if I guess right, it probably caused a lot of fuss with that boy's clan. Shouldn't you ask for what is rightfully yours in order to prevent any problems? I don't really care about that. He was born outside of my village, so I can't really do anything if he has done nothing wrong that involved Konoha aside from the Nami's mission. But they also had their own mission given by the Mizukage Dano. Minato replied. Orochimaru nodded at his answer, but inwardly, he was sweating a bit. I didn't expect there to be 2 more Kages. I have to delay Konoha's destruction for later on. Maybe if that Uchiha, the Kumo's Jinchuriki or the Taki's Jinchuriki, proves to be strong enough and get Gaara to release his Biju in the middle of the arena, it would give me the needed distraction to get this bastard Namikaze alone. Yes, that might be the best course of action. Arena. 2 figures were gazing over each other, searching for something that could give him, her the advantage. In the end, both of them smiled at each other. The proctor, seeing this, stepped forward and shouted, Uchiha Naruto versus Ni Yujito Hajime. They stood still for at least 10 seconds. Yujito proved to be the impatient one as she tensed her muscles before vanishing in a blur of speed. Both contestants locked eyes before the Jinchuriki sent a punch with her right hand to his stomach, but the Uchiha merely sidestepped. He still didn't needed the Sharingan at this speeds, though he was surprised at the flexibility of his opponent as she placed the same right hand on the ground and used it to impulse herself, spinning and sending a strong kick on the black-haired, who blocked with both of his arms, but he still was sent backwards from the sheer strength. Naruto grunted as he actually felt that before forming a single hand seal, before puffing his chest. Katan, Gokaku no Jutsu. Yujito and the stadium were quite surprised at the mastery the genin showed, as an huge fireball was speeding towards her. She made her own signs. Katan, Aoi Gokaku no Jutsu. Loud cheers were heard from the crowd as the 2 huge fireballs, one blue and the other whitish, fought for dominance. Not even 3 seconds later, Naruto was surprised as the blue flames engulfed his fireball and was still heading towards him. He clicked his teeth before slamming his foot on the ground as a massive and thick wall of earth ascended in front of him. Those blue flames are quite powerful indeed. Doton, Dorihiki. Naruto was right as he still had to push some more chakra into the wall. He didn't have time to analyze the situation as his now active Sharingan made his body react on his own as he ducked a powerful and quick swipe went through where he was standing. Nekizum. This was the open he needed as Yujito had extended his arm more than necessary, and Naruto capitalized on that as his right hand shimmered a bit and wind seems to violently dance around the palm before he slammed it on her gut, sending her into the hair. Futon, Yuzu-sun too. Yujito had the air knocked out of her, and she gritted her teeth from the pain. She didn't took her eyes off of her opponent, and that's the reason why it widened in shock as he seemed to just disappear without any trace whatsoever before a huge amount of pain was felt on her back that sent her into the ground, followed by an explosion from the force of the impact. Doton Domo. Naruto landed gracefully on the ground, and everyone noticed the dark skin and immediately realized that he had hardened his skin for a far more powerful punch. Yujito snarled at being humiliated like that. She called forth some of her Biju-S chakra as her nails elongated into durable claws before tensing her muscled, and in a blur of movement sped towards Naruto, who with his Sharingan observed every single movement as his body moved on instinct, dodging every single thrust from her opponent, who was now getting impatient for not connecting any of her swipes. She suddenly stopped before going through a sequence of hand seals, before spitting a flaming ball of hair that assumes the shape of a mouse engulfed in flames which lunged towards the Uchiha, who had its interest piqued at the unfamiliar jutsu. Nevertheless, he started to dodge but soon realized that these nuisances were following him. Nezumi Ketama. Getting tired of this child's play, a sealless clone materialized out of thin air on his side. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Both sped through hand seals after jumping out of the way of those annoying rats, as the original Naruto's chest bulged before breathing an intensive and massive amount of fire, which took shape of a brilliant phoenix. Everyone had a shocked and fascinated faces at how detailed, beautiful, and huge that thing was. Katon, Fenakusu Neppa. The Bunshin had just finished his sequence, inhaling a huge amount of hair before releasing a massive whirlwind, and the crowd had to place their hands over their ears from the loud sound that the winds, or whatever it was emitting. Futon, Senpu o Sakabo. The results were astonishing. The phoenix impossibly just grew in size, and the flames were whitish caused from the intense heat. But the screeching that the thing released made the field shake under its power before lunging towards the shocked woman, who saw death right before her eyes. Kagebuth. You've grown quite powerful, Naruto-kun. Maybe we should have that spar after the exam, were the thoughts of Mizukichi. He's beating Yujito-chan using just pure skill, Reikage thought as he gritted his teeth in frustration. Wonderful. He has fully developed his Sharingan already. Maybe I should just take him instead of Sasuke-kun. No. Sasuke-kun's state of mind is currently unstable, so it will be easier for me to get him. Kazekage thought as he was literally drooling at the immense talent of the young Uchiha. This is bad. Now I'm sure that Danzo will do something like kidnap or kill the kid. But with the invasion coming, it will be very hard to protect him, and this could give Konoha even more problems. Hokage's mind was racing miles per second as he tried to come up with something. Arena. The stadium was quiet as they watched the smoke caused from the explosion disappear, and to everyone's shock and fear, a dark red silhouette with one tail could be seen in the middle of the crater. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this development as he felt the malevolent and significant increase of chakra in his opponent. He was forced to grab the hilt of his gunbai and bring it forward as a huge and intense heated fireball with blue flames licking its core was already in front of him, ready to burn him to crisp. Bio and Hoka. The gunbai flashed pure white as it seemed to absorb the intense flames as it completely disappeared 2 seconds later to the shock of everyone in the stadium and Yujito. She didn't notice him slightly moving the fan on her direction as an explosion of chakra came from it, enveloping Yujito on her chakra cloak, screaming in agony from the power it reflected into her. Yuka Higeshi. Another moment of silence in the stadium after one more explosion in the corner. The Uchiha clan were furious at the technique invented by their ancestor being used by their traitor and foreigner. They were snapped out of their thoughts as the stadium shook from the sheer pressure of chakra and a roar. Naruto's widened his eyes in shock as his Sharingan caught a blur of movement before his red eyes started to spin widely. A huge claw made of red chakra was just about to hit him. Crack. Naruto was sent backwards as a spiderweb crack formed on the black ribcage that was surrounding his body completely. Everyone had his eyes widened at what they were seeing. TSH, if it wasn't for my Susanoo, I would be crippled. And she almost cracked it as well, damn. I need to finish this before she evolves further. Naruto's Mangekyo started to spinning widely as he sped through several hand seals in just a second. Just as he clapped his hands, an enormous wide-spread wave of black flames materialized out of thin air. Everyone had to hold their breaths from the intense heat. Even the Kages were having problems as multiple rolls of sweat formed on their foreheads. Enten, Sabaki no Hano. Everyone heard the painful screams. Who wouldn't? Naruto clicked his teeth as the flames started to extinguish and the burned body of Yujito was now visible, and everyone had to stop the gasp that almost came out of their mouths at the brutal damage of the technique. Yujito was in pain. She never felt like this before in her life. Her rage was building up for being so weak. She can only guess what the Raikage was thinking right now. Kitten, your body will not be able to stand my chakra with the current damage it possesses. I will have to use a good amount of my chakra and will need to concentrate on healing it. You should just give up. I'm sorry. The Kumo's Jinin couldn't reply. How could she? She couldn't even use the best card she had in hands. Pitiful. Disappointment. Weak. Calm down, kitten. Rage. That's what she felt. Rage for this unknown boy who beat her soundly, and mostly rage for herself for being unable to stand up against stronger opponents. Corrosive chakra started to build up. Even the ground beneath her started to levitate. Naruto saw and felt this as he had to fight against the pain that came from using the last jutsu, but he had to do one more thing or else he would die. He noticed the trembling in his vision. He was going blind if he kept using his eyes for too long. I have to finish this. A huge explosion shook the stadium, and everyone widened their eyes in fear and shock as many civilians and shinobis alike felt the insane bloodlust coming from a certain point. As the smoke disappeared, time seemed to stop for everyone, as in front of them was a Bakeneko completely engulfed in blue and black flames. It also had heterochromatic eyes, the right being yellow and the left being green. Similar to an odd-eyed cat without pupils. Kagebooth. Make a barrier in this instant. I'll stop the Biju with Kushina and Ryu. Ryu equals dragon equals Yamato. Minato was already taking one of his famous kunais when a calm voice stopped him. No. Naruto-kun has everything under his control. Everyone gazed over Mizukage as if he had lost his mind. This was a Biju they were talking about, but then they remembered Naruto's new eyes and relaxed a bit. Raikage was fuming in anger, as this would prove catastrophic for his village. With a sigh, the Hokage spoke in a reluctant tone. Fine. Put the barrier immediately. With the choruses of "Hi" they vanished. Though no one noticed the salivating Kazekage as he made some discreet hand movements. Ku. This is even better than what I was expecting. Arena. Naruto saw a purple barrier being formed around him and couldn't help but smile as he thought about Yagura. The Uchiha readied himself, strapping the gun by to his back as the monster in front of him started to gather chakra in front of his mouth. Blue, positive, and black, negative. Chakra started to emerge and condensing and shaping itself into a sphere of highly concentrated chakra. No more than 3 seconds passed, and Naruto tensed his muscles as the huge cat ate the ball, and her cheeks puffed as smoke left her mouth in the process. She released a massive beam of chakra at tremendous speed. Bijidama. Small chakra flames manifested in one hand on each Naruto's finger before slamming it to the ground and pushing more chakra than it is normally used for this type of jutsu. A red cylindrical barrier materialized around him as the beam of chakra was just about to hit him. Uchiha Kenjin. A massive explosion rocketed through the stadium. The barrier that was protecting the crowd almost broke from the sheer pressure of chakra involved on the explosion, and everyone went silent for a minute as the smoke dissolved, and they could see the red barrier disappearing with a panting Uchiha in the middle of it. Everyone was shocked as he was practically unharmed except for the exhaustion. But it was not over yet. Naruto gathered in huge amount of chakra, directing it into his eyes before locking it straight at the heterochromatic ones before he murmured something, and everything went quiet. Tenjo, Yokusei Suru. I never liked the fact that they didn't have specific technique to suppress or tame a Biju, and instead they just did by looking at it, so yeah. The translation is quite simple, but I think it gives another gracious to it. Heavenly Eye, suppress. The heavenly part is one of the meaning of Mangekyo. Naruto and everyone present watch in fascination as the blue flames and the cat itself started to recede, and 30 seconds later a lone figure was unconscious on the ground with her clothes all battered. Many burns from the previous flames and from the corrosive chakra, as her skin seemed like it was peeling off. The proctor, who was still amazed by the battle that took place, was about to declare Naruto the winner, but an explosion in the Kage's booth followed by loud roars and hisses from every corner of the village as many unknown shinobis and snakes started to invade and destroy the walls that surrounded it. Naruto's Mangekyo receded to the normal 3-toe mode, and he had to tilt his head to the side as a kunai would have impaled him. He was sweating and was breathing heavily from the amount of chakra he used in one go. He was still inexperienced to a certain degree when using his evolved Sharingan. He had to talk with his mother when he gets back to the village to make use of his father's gift. If I make this out alive. He was interrupted out of his thoughts as 5 Otogekure shinobis dropped in front of him, eyeing him like a prey. Who would have thought? You're coming with us. Our master wants to meet you. Naruto raised his eyebrow at that before replying with a stoic no. Then, consider yourself death. The most probably captain sped through hand seals, puffing his chest and breathing a large-sized fireball towards Naruto, who was gritting his teeth as he still could not move. He would have to rely on his Mangekyo again, but that didn't bode well to his body as he was still recovering, nor his eyes. Just as he was about to do something stupid, a voice stopped him that made him sigh in relief. Sueton Miserapa. An huge torrent of water was expelled from a boy's mouth, destroying completely the fireball and still going towards the enemy. Another voice, now feminine, was heard, and what she murmured made the Odonines tremble in fear and realization. Right on. Kingekiha. An explosion of electricity merged with the current of water which impacted with the 5 unknown ninjas and instantly electrifying them, as everyone screamed in pain as their chakra coils were being burned by the electrical jolts. You're late, Chojuro Ringo. The now identified Chojuro and Ringo looked at him before gazing at each other and finally locking their eyes with him again. They put their best arrogant smirks they could muster before folding their arms over their chest and replied in unison. HN. Naruto's sweat dropped at that, finding the whole process quite similar to that of someone, but he just couldn't put a finger on it. He was snapped out of his musings as he saw a mop of blonde hair following a red-haired and instantly knew what was about to happen as he watched Suna fighting alongside Odo. So, they pretend to unleash his Biju. It will not be very difficult considering his state of mind. I need to get there quickly before it kills someone I care about. The black-haired orders both of his teammates to help the Mizu's daimyo, as he had some businesses to take care. They nodded with reluctance and vanished from their spot towards their new target. On his way, Naruto saw Yujito's teammates grabbing her to take somewhere safe and Pakura destroying her enemies. A small part of him wanted to go and protected her, but in that moment she locked eyes with him, and he was surprised as they were quite far from each other. Nevertheless, he shook his head as she winked at him. Troublesome girl. 30 minutes later, 5 miles from Konohagakure, Naruto was moving at extreme speeds as his body and his chakra reserves were decent enough for another battle should it take place. As he was using his sensory abilities to pinpoint his target's chakra, they suddenly skyrocketed, and he instantly jumped out of the branch where he was standing as several compressed wind balls thrusted into the tree and immediately crushing it. Futon. Shinkajioku. Naruto gazed over the man that appeared in front of him. He immediately recognized him from the chunin exams, and if the hate he was emitting was any indicator, this old man wanted him death. Who are you and what you want? The old man looked at the young man's Sharingan and replied, My name is Danzo Shimura, and for your second question, I want you death? No, you will die here, and I'll get what is Konoha's rightful hers. Though those precious eyes will be for me, but he doesn't need to know that. Since my plan for the Uchihas failed, I have to take this chance, and hopefully that bastard snake's offer is still up. Danzo has no Sharingan, as the Uchiha massacre didn't took place. So, you want my Sharingan? It was not a question. He continued, Konoha has really fallen. To think you are coming after me when your little village is being invaded. I'm at loss of words. If Danzo was angered at the statement, he didn't show it, though Naruto noticed the slight anger in his tone when he spoke next. Your opinion is worthless. You'll die here, and those eyes of yours will prove to be useful for the future of Konoha. Naruto didn't answer that as his sensors picked Mei's chakra fighting multiple other signatures. He knew his sensei could take care of herself, and if he could guess who they were. So, he actually planned to gang up on me with whoever he asked for. He's just another nuisance in this world. Tuchan. Danzo took the silence as an invitation to start the fight. Without any further warnings, he gathered chakra into his lungs before breathing in huge gust of wind towards the boy. Futon, de Tapa. The same could be said for Naruto as he saw his new opponent gathering chakra with his Sharingan. And with the same movement, he filled his lungs with air and molding chakra with it before a burning sensation was felt in his throat and immediately releasing a large fireball, which using the incoming wind, it expanded and increased his speed tenfold. Katon. Gokaku no Jutsu. Danzo knew he would lose if he prolonged the fight because of his affinity's weakness and his old age, so he decided to take it up a notch. He jumped to the side before clapping his palms, interlacing his fingers, and the next action made Naruto widen his eyes in shock as his blood started to pump even more than his previous battle. Mokuton, Daijirin no Jutsu. Naruto watched in glee with his Sharingan as Danzo moved his arm backwards as its skin transformed into several branches before lunging them forwards as they moved at high speeds at him. The Uchiha couldn't believe his luck, fighting not one but two Mokuton users, though not at Hashirama's level. It was still damn luck, and amazing as his blood boiled at the prospect of dancing this nuisance. He sped through hand seals as his cheeks bulged with black flames already threatening to leave his mouth before he finally let loose a tornado of pure black flames that completely destroyed the wood in front of him. Enten, Hano no Tatsumaki. Danzo, seeing his wood being literally disintegrated by the flames. He leaped to the side to avoid it, but his eyes widened in shock at the famous and unique Shunshin as Naruto seemed to materialize behind him out of nowhere before making an arc movement with his sword as a powerful gale came out of it, followed by a deep and wide cut on his back, making him grit his teeth as actually blood gathered in his mouth, though he contained it because he was shocked at the known technique as his mind raced through thousands of thoughts in mere seconds. Yuzu no Ken, Arakuru Kyofu. That was just like Shunshin no Shursui and that sword technique. No doubt, that was Kushinus. How? He couldn't dwell more on it as he saw his opponent's cheeks bulge and breathing multiples of boulders of molten rock. He snarled in frustration as he had forgot about his other Kekkei Genkai. Yoton, Shakagari no Jutsu. Danzo clapped his hands as from the ground many trees emerged, gathered and formed in huge and thick wall. He was obligated to push more chakra into it as he saw the wood being annihilated like it was nothing. Mokuton, Mokujihiki. He didn't notice the smirk on Naruto's face, who vanished without any trace before reappearing behind the old man, who was still taking rather deep breaths. Nonetheless, he gripped the hilt of his sword, slamming it into the ground, and molded right chakra through it as a support as an electrical discharge flows through his body, and the sword, which using the ground as a medium, instantly electrified Danzo, who this time let out a gasp of pain. Flashback. Chidori. The sound of chirping birds made Naruto raise an eyebrow, analyzing every single detail about this jutsu with his Sharingan. He noticed the disgusted face of Kakashi, and realization hit him upon seeing the drops of sweat on Sasuke's face. Flashback end. Chidori Nagashi. Naruto gazed over the emotionless old man with an impassive look before his eyes widened slightly as the body in front of him turned into wood. Oh, a Moku Bunshin, huh? A voice quite distant behind alerted him from the incoming danger. Kuchios no Jutsu. As the voice resounded in the air, a huge plume of smoke was visible to Naruto, who narrowed his eyes at the large animal in front of him. A gigantic elephantine chimera, dark orange in color with the exception of its trunk, legs, and the markings around its eyes. Its feet are striped. It also has huge tusks, what looks like a beard, as well as long, sharp claws. It has bandages wrapped around its head and plated armor at the base of its trunk. Now, this is going to be a problem for him. That is. As he finished that thought, Naruto sped through a known sequence of hand seals as Danzo narrowed his eyes, not expecting that this young boy had a summoning of his own as well. 1 second later, nothing happened, and Danzo was already thinking if this boy was actually stupid. But as he finished that thought, the ground split into pieces and a giant entity emerged slowly from the ground. Its tails flowed freely in the air, and Danzo, and probably everyone in Konoha for that matter, could see its rich brown fur. But that's not what shocked Danzo. Oh no, the most terrifying thing about this beast was that it had 3 heads and was actually leaking streams of fire from his mouth. Danzo knew about this supposedly animal. In ancient mythology, it was mentioned that this was the creature that was entrusted with the task of preventing the dead souls from leaving the underworld. It was said to be the greatest fire summon. Even the mythic's dragon and phoenix could be killed, but this dog was said to be immortal. The Cerberus. Even Danzo's summon started to tremble a bit as the massive monster opened his mouth, breathing a good amount of fire before speaking. Oh, it has been a while since I've been outside the underworld. Greetings, young Naruto. I guess you need my help. Naruto, who was now on top of one of the Cerberus' head, had his arms folded over his chest, and his well-known smirk displayed on his face as he finally had the chance to fight alongside his partner. Well, if you don't mind being my partner for this little dance. Last time, Kuchios no Jutsu. As the voice resounded in the air, and huge plume of smoke was visible to Naruto, who narrowed his eyes at the large animal in front of him. A gigantic elephantine chimera, dark orange in color with the exception of its trunk, legs, and the markings around its eyes. Its feet are striped. It also has huge tusks, what looks like a beard, as well as long, sharp claws. It has bandages wrapped around its head and plated armor at the base of its trunk. Now, this is going to be a problem for him, that is. As he finished that thought, Naruto sped through a known sequence of hand seals as Danzo narrowed his eyes, not expecting that this young boy had a summoning of his own as well. 1 second later, nothing happened, and Danzo was already thinking if this boy was actually stupid. But as he finished that thought, the ground split into pieces and a giant entity emerged slowly from the ground. Its tails flowed freely in the air, and Danzo, and probably everyone in Konoha for that matter, could see its rich brown fur. But that's not what shocked Danzo. Oh no, the most terrifying thing about this beast was that it had 3 heads and was actually leaking streams of fire from his mouth. Danzo knew about this supposedly animal. In ancient mythology, it was mentioned that this was the creature that was entrusted with the task of preventing the dead souls from leaving the underworld. It was said to be the greatest fire summon. Even the mythic's dragon and phoenix could be killed, but this dog was said to be immortal. The Cerberus. Even Danzo's summon started to tremble a bit as the massive monster opened his mouth, breathing a good amount of fire before speaking. Oh, it has been a while since I've been outside the underworld. Greetings, young Naruto. I guess you need my help. Naruto, who was now on top of one of the Cerberus' head, had his arms folded over his chest and his well-known smirk displayed on his face as he finally had the chance to fight alongside his partner. Well, if you don't mind being my partner for this little dance. Now, Chapter 6. Into the Snow. Shimura Danzo was a man who rarely displayed any emotions whatsoever, but, right now, he was trembling in shock and absolute fear. His mind was demanding him to run, but his body wasn't answering. He just stood there, mouth open agape at the enormous beast in front of him. Some flames that were licking the Cerberus' mouth dropped on the grass beneath him, where it immediately turned to ash. Naruto saw both reactions of Danzo and his pet, and couldn't help but remark, "You dug your own grave, old man." Now, enough talking. The young Uchiha went through several hand seals as the 3-headed dog who took the hint began to gather a monstrous amount of chakra on his belly. Naruto blew up a massive burst of wind as it shaped itself into a demon head, roaring to the skies, towards Danzo and his summoning. Futon, Kamikamono. Cerberus, who's been gathering large amounts of chakra on his belly, opened his 3-headed mouths as on the first one. A compressed ball of lighting was being gathered. On the second head, smoke started to come out of his mouth as the atmosphere increased several degrees, flames dripping out of his mouth ready to be unleashed, and on the last head, everyone could see the water being gathered and taking shape into a furiously rotating tornado from its open mouth. Not even a second later, after Naruto sent the bust of wind, had the mythical beast released his most fearsome technique, Tore Combo, Jigaku no Hakai, and all hell broke loose. Boom! A mushroom-shaped blackish smoke was their only proof that their combination had at least hit the right spot. There was some cracked and burned wood that came out of the smoke, which Naruto immediately knew that was some defensive technique that Danzo had tried to use as last resort. But as seconds passed, and a random breeze blew away the smoke originated from the jutsu that had made even Konoha itself shake a bit. A 50 meters hole was now visible, and right on the center stood many burnt limbs of what was once Shimura Danzo. It's been a while since I used such technique. Brings back some good old memories. Naruto couldn't help but sweat drop at the dismissing tone, though he still added his cent to his trusted summoning statement. HN, that's a nice view. The black-haired still genin narrowed his eyes at a specific location as his sensor abilities picked up the malevolent chakra dispersing, which told him that the battle against the Ichibi had been successful and on Konoha's favor. If I'm not mistaken, I saw the Toad boss while I was still dancing with the crippled old man. So that means Kushina's brat signed a Gamma contract. Interesting. He was broken out of his thoughts as a familiar chakra signature was heading towards him. Fast, he locked eyes with the underground beast. Thank you for the cooperation. I'll let you out some other time." The tri-headed dog grunted in acknowledgement, and just as he arrived, the ground shook a bit as flames emerged from the scorched ground beneath him, covering his whole body before it consumed the entity. The pressure on the atmosphere from the presence of mythical animals suddenly vanished, and the only thing that stood in the clearing was Naruto and the gigantic crater in front of him. Not even a second later, an auburn and blue blur crashed on his body as Naruto felt his head being crushed between two soft and large pillows. Era. I was so worried for my lil Naruto. Naruto, who was trying to breath, had only one thought before he let his body get his well-deserved rest. Troublesome moments. Few days later, Konohagakure no Sato survived the invasion. There weren't many casualties. Both civilians and daimyos were well secured and protected thanks to the many foreign nations that decided to help. Orochimaru, the culprit behind the invasion, had successfully escaped on the verge of death. The power of 3 Kages was just too much, and the fact that he wasn't able to resurrect both Shodaime and Nidaime Hokages at full power just made it even harder. Well, certainly there will be other options for him to exploit in the future that for sure will grant his wish of destroying Konoha once and for all. At the end, even though the chunin exams was a failure, every single higher-up had their decision made up, and after everyone reorganized and talked a bit about the battles that the whole world watched, followed by their contribution in the invasion, they finally rewarded and promoted their respective shinobis who they thought deserved it. Everything seemed to be well as you could see some people from different villages talking to each other, a smile plastered on their faces, but the Kages knew better. The tensions between each village were increasing. Each Kage saw the prowess of the next generation, and being the ones who could tell, just by a mere glimpse, the strengths and weaknesses, they instantly knew who really won the tournament. Will of Fire Hotel, room number 31. Kirigakure has been producing some fine shinobis, but that Uchiha really takes the cake. Yondaime Raikage pondered a bit at the words that came out of the mouth of one of his bodyguards, Darui. Yes, and you didn't need to be a censor to tell the massive pool of chakra flowing through his body and to be able to control it with such ease. It's phenomenal. The voice of C, the other bodyguard, made itself known as he voiced his opinion. The concerned tone didn't go unnoticed by both mans in the room. The Raikage finally opened his mouth to speak, in a commanding tone. Darui, C. Hokage's office. Kirigakure. It seems the rumors were indeed true. They've really come a long way since the Sandai Mizukage died. That brat Yagura has been doing a remarkable job. Minato-kun, we can't avoid what's to come. Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, held a serious face on his face as he gazed at his sensei and father in all but blood with an equal expression as he continues. Even if the chunin exams served a certain purpose in the past, like to rate how the next generation are in terms of power compared to other nations, we can't be that naive to think that the difference of power that the Uchiha kid displayed during the exams will be irrelevant to the clan heads, especially the Uchihas. It was like a second coming Madara. Maybe we can use the fact that Suna betrayed us and somehow benefit from it. We can make them cannon fodder. I'm afraid the dash. Jiraiya-sensei. New Leaf Hotel. Room number 24. Did you notice how the other Kages seemed to be on edge about something, Mizukage-sama? Yagura, who had been staring at some civilians repairing some damage done from the invasion, looked over his shoulders to see his 2 bodyguards standing there, one with an impassive face and the other with a sharky grin. The former being the one who asked the question. His partner, not one to pass up the opportunity to humiliate his friend, was next. Are you worried about something, Zabuza-chan? The giant blue man, Hoshigaki Kisame, asked, though you could tell he did indeed notice the tension that was present during the meeting between the Kages to decide which genin deserved the promotion. His tone held a vast amount of excitement. Yagura saw this. He pondered a bit, and with an emotionless face and tone, he commanded to both of them. Zabuza Kisame. Unbeknownst to the Kages, every single one of them spoke in unison the next few words to their respective bodyguards/sensei. Prepare for war. Time skip. Kirigakure no Sato. It has been a month since the chunin exams and the followed invasion. Kirigakure has been striving even more rapidly for the past month as many small countries requested them, or more specifically, Naruto's team for missions. Yagura and many adults were happy that their village was able to successfully surpass and make everyone forget about the horrendous past events that occurred in Kiri. Because of their new popularity and the many rising stars, a chance for an interesting alliance with a small but healthy country, mainly because of their famous technology that surpassed every single great nation, was heading their way instead of another village. Mizuki's office. In front of Mizuki's desk stood the former Team 9, Ringo, Chojuro, and Naruto, alongside Mei. Every single member of the team got promoted to the chunin rank and effectively disbanding the team, though that didn't mean that they lost contact with one another. Nope. Their former sensei, Mei Terumi, would beat them up to a pulp if they just disappeared without notice. Standing a little more far away was the man who requested the mission, an escort mission. The man had short gray hair with a beard and mustache along with small black eyes. For the most part, he wore small glasses and a baby blue long-sleeve shirt with a navy blue blazer on top. This man was Sandayu-sama. After some introductions, the man coughed a bit and finally spoke. "Nice to meet you all. My name is Sandayu-sama. I'm the personal assistant of Koyuki Kazahana. You may know her as Yuki Fujikase. At the beginning, I was going to head towards Konoha, but then I heard a few rumors about the chunin exams held recently, and a friend of mine requested strongly you three, as you put up quite the performance there." There was only silence for a few seconds, and the first to speak was surprisingly Naruto, his impassive face and his imposing figure making the older man flinch a bit. "You're requesting 3 chunins and a jounin for a simple escorting? What's the catch?" There was surprise flickering in those small black eyes, but the man answered nonetheless. "You're quite astute. Yes, there's a catch. A man named Dodo Kazahana, uncle to Koyuki. You know the story. And yes, I know that in the canon they didn't know at the beginning, but I'm revealing everything from the start as I don't think the opinion that the general population has from Kiri is that they aren't as lenient as compared to Konoha. And that's the whole story." Silence filled the room again. Naruto was lost and thought about other things such as a new technique he wanted to create. He lost himself in the middle of the explanation as he already knew they were going to partake in the mission, though he raised an eyebrow at this so-called chakra armors that the Yuki no Kuni fabricated. He was snapped out of his thoughts as the Mizukage spoke for the first time since the man started his story. "All right, Chunin's Ringo, Naruto, Chojuro, and Jounin Mei. You are to help Sandisan to re-establish the Snow Country and do whatever is necessary to bring down the tyrant Dodo." A choruses of "hi" was his answer before each one of them disappeared in their own shunshin's. Suchikage's office. "You 3 are to help Dodo Kazahana. His spy network said there were rumors about his niece going to request help from some ninja village. Follow his orders as soon as you get there. If we're successful, we will be working towards a new alliance, so I don't need to tell how important is this mission for our country, right?" There was no response, just 3 nods. Inoki didn't show any outwards reaction as he was already expecting this. He noticed the excitement rolling off of Deidara miles away, the bored look of Rashi and nervousness of their last team member Yaki Takashi, who was the support of this team, being a medical and an overall good sensor. "Good, now off you go. Nadar Roga will be waiting for you at the borders of Yuki no Kuni." Dismissed. This time there was a choruses of "hi." Suchikage-sama, before the 3 of them went to their homes to get their packs ready for a long-term mission. Hokage's office. Namikaze Minato was worried. Ever since the chunin exams, Konoha's being request for less and less missions. This didn't bode well for his village, as even if they had a good balance and amount of health in their vaults, in the long term things could become difficult, and if their population starts to notice it, there could be many problems. The daimyo could help during these times, but even he was stunned at the decrease. One thing that worried him as well was the elder Shimura Danzo. The man just disappeared of the map, but a week later, a pair of chunins had barged in the office pale and on the verge of puking. Minato had a surprised look as both shinobis told him they had found a body and confirmed that it was without doubt Danzo. The Hokage gritted his teeth in frustration at the bad timing. Even though he didn't like the old war hawk, the man had the most experience on many fields, on pair with his advisor, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and his route would be invaluable in this time of needs. He had to get some alliances. Suno was a probability. He had received a scroll from the Jounin Baki, who was temporarily the Kazakage, as was written in the scroll, and that they were training the soon-to-be Godame. He said that they were tricked by Orochimaru and other things that he really didn't care, and that they wanted to re-establish the alliance with some deals that benefited even more Konoha. When he spoke to the council about it, the civilian side had greedily accepted much to the shinobi side annoyance, though, after checking the pros and cons, they accepted it as well. Everyone knew the dark times ahead of them. They could feel it, and after reflecting about a special topic, the Yondaime finally announced many rules about the academy, such as the starting of the academy will be at 5 years old instead of 8, and the promotion to genin will be at 12 years old instead of 15. Many adults were worried about their children as the majority knew what this meant, though inwardly they refused to admit. Minato knew he had to do something else. It was not enough. Konoha needed a boost in power. He had to put the village first, and with an order that would bring many consequences in the future, he commanded to the 4 people in front of him: Jiraiya-sensei, Jounin Hatake Kakashi, Uzumaki Kushina, and Chunin Namikaze Menma. You are to meet Shibuki, the current leader of Takigakure. Give him this scroll and wait for his response. If he accepts, very well. But if he refuses, you are to infiltrate the village and kidnap Fu and bring her back to Konoha safely. Kushina had her eyes widened in shock. Flashbacks from when she was younger and kidnapped by Kyumo shinobis infiltrating her mind as her face turned into a scowl, which Minato noticed and immediately spoke. Kushi-chan, we are on verge of war. Our financials took a big blow. Many foreigners had their eyes on Uchiha Sasuke and our son, but the attitude that Sasuke-kun displayed in the second round is now public knowledge, and many were disappointed as he is the heir of the famous Uchiha clan. On the opposite, Uchiha Naruto showed respect, power, and intelligence during the whole tournament, winning it in the end. We can't be naive and wait for another invasion. Orochimaru is still out there doing God knows what and plotting against us. Please understand. Kushina didn't reply. Her emotionless face didn't give off anything. And with just a simple nod that made her husband sigh, she continued to listening to the instructions. TSH. So much for friendship and pacifism, Amido-bachan. Kakashi and Jiraiya understood the situation and the orders. They knew that it was wrong, but they also had to do it for their village. If they could reduce the deaths of their shinobis, they would do whatever it took. Though, the Sannin was lost in thought during a few seconds. Again, war. No matter what, I can't find the right answer. Is it really impossible to achieve peace in the world? Menma was in a turmoil. He knew his mother was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. His mind thought on how the other Kages could do the same and order the kidnapping of his mother. He steeled his resolve. He was going to protect this village no matter what, and they would bring back the Jinchuriki from Taki. What they didn't know was that this was going to be considered the first act of war, one that would bring consequences. Time skip. It's been a week since Naruto and his former team departed from Kirigakure. At the moment, they were resting inside a wooden house for tourists that took that specific route in those snowy mountains and tall glaciers. They were taking their time as they had 2 civilians, Sandeu and Koyuki, in their midst, so they didn't want to rush towards the gathering point where they would meet with some samurais that were still loyal to the last and now deceased daimyo Susetsu Kazahana, father to Koyuki. Naruto, who was meditating at the roof under the snow, twitched his fingers and slowly opened his eyes as a figure he hasn't seen for some time now emerged from the ground. Zetsu, the Venus flytrap-like, greeted his longtime friend and master since the death of Uchiha Madara. Greetings, Master Naruto. Whoa, you look strong and so grown up already. Naruto didn't answer the extroverted white Zetsu's comment, already knowing and used to his antics. Though, he was curious as he gave specific orders to the being in front of him many years ago, and if he was here. What happened? It was Black Zetsu who, without missing a beat, answered, Konoha will be heading towards Takigakure to retrieve Komiai and its Jinchuriki. The group of shinobis going on this mission have a scroll written specifically by Namikaze Minato to request them the girl to be brought back to Konoha, and in exchange, they will accept the alliance that Shibuki, the current leader, has proposed some time ago. Naruto didn't like the feeling he was getting as Black Zetsu recounted what he heard from his many white Zetsus that were spread all across the elemental nations. The order that he gave to him was to keep tabs on the Jinchurikis or Bijus in case they were free, so he knew if anyone was abusing the beast's powers. Even though his father thought of them as pets, he himself had another view. He respected them and wanted to understand the chakra beings. He knew the power they held, and if someone had some twist idealism, was greedy and wanted to conquer the world, they would want and need them. So, he made his own mission to not let that happen. And if he refuses? The next words that the Uchiha heard made his blood boil. They will kidnap her. Time skip. Another week has passed. Naruto was immensely quiet. Mei and the rest of their team saw this. They were already used to his quietness, but every now and then their favorite black-haired teammate, would give some smart-ass comment. But there was nothing. Naruto was in a turmoil. He couldn't do anything about Nanabai. He was still on this mission that would take a good portion of time. He had no illusions that this, kidnapping or not, was going to be a major event. The other nations would be seeing this as a threat, no doubt about that. Especially, the Raikage would see this as an offense and indirect attack. With his brash attitude and small brains, he could probably do something that would spark the Fourth Ninja World War. The Uchiha released a sigh. He wasn't going to do anything, not that he could. He would apologize to Sanbai later on. He often spoke with him in Yagura's mindscape, with the use of his Sharingan. It was nice to have a chat with a being that possessed such vast amount of knowledge. He would have to make some plans regarding what would happen, and in case it involved his village, he would destroy whoever comes close to it. Another matter was Pakura. He spent some time with her before both had to come back to their respective village. If she was right, then Hanzo was going to come after him due to killing his daughter. He couldn't care less. His blood pumped in excitement at the prospect of dancing with whom many saw as the strongest shinobi at the moment. He let out an involuntarily maniacal grin, though it was instantly replaced by his impassive one. Going back to Pakura, he didn't know what to do as well. He liked the girl a bit too much. She was strong. He could give him the excitement of a real battle. It made him instantly respect her as a kunoichi. He wouldn't admit, but he was actually mad that she didn't enroll herself in the Kirigakure's shinobi ranks. There weren't many girls that interested him. Mei, Pakura, and finally Kushina, who he spent a quality time with during one of the training sessions, but that's a thought for another time, were the few ones he could tolerate. But Pakura had something that put her ahead of the others. He shook his, getting rid of those thoughts, noticing they were really close to a town near Yukigakure no Sato, where Dodo was last seen. His body suddenly stiffened. His eyes shifted to his Sharingan in an instant, and he immediately realized why his senses skyrocketed. Hayaton, Kakuryu Bofusetsu. A large black ether-like dragon was heading towards them from the sky. His mind raced miles per second as he didn't sense them when they were apparently so close. Was I that distracted? Enten. His hands blurred through many hand seals. His chest puffed after inhaling a good amount of air. Enko Bakusatsu. Naruto spewed a huge amount of black flames from his mouth, taking shape of a black tiger. It roars to the skies as it is about to clash with the dragon. It sank its sharp teeth on the dragon's head when it suddenly lit up, and an explosion of black flames washed and melted all the black ice, immediately rising the temperature around the area. Few meters away, three figures were watching everything. They kinda expected to take them out easily, as it seems they didn't have any good sense, or otherwise they would have sensed them by how close they were. They suddenly paled as they watched black flames being released by some brat. That's. The other two companions were concerned about their teammate. It looked like he has seen a ghost. What's up, Nadar? The now named Nadar didn't comment, as he saw the figure that stopped his technique suddenly locking eyes with him. Shit. He's a censor. He immediately turned to his teammates. In an urgent voice, Fubuki, Mizore, we need to move now. Send the signal to the sky, or we are death. Not a second later, after his pink-haired teammate threw an explosive kunai to the sky, the ground started to shake, and he immediately knew who the culprit was. Though, he still had his pride and would fight until the end. Back with the others, everyone was high alert the moment Naruto sent forth a stream of flames. Everyone was surprised at the color of it, but didn't ask as they tensed at the prospect of fighting. The majority of them had trained to this point. They would defeat Dodo and free Yuki no Kuni. Mei, Ringo, and Chojuro turned to Naruto, who had his eyes closed in concentration. The former started to speak as she was the leader and needed something concrete to formulate a plan. Where are they and how many? She didn't have to wait more than 2 seconds as the Uchiha opened his blood-red eyes. 3 tomos, spinning widely, replying. 5 o'clock, 80 meters. Mei raised an eyebrow at the distance as she watched in curiosity Naruto going through some hand seals. The huge spike on chakra made her almost even take a step back unconsciously. Almost. They bypassed your sensories? My, that's new. Naruto let out a grunt before slamming his hands on the snowy ground. It was just a fluke. Yotan, Dai Funka. He had to put a whole lot more chakra on that, as the temperature on this country was the opposite of what he was intending to use. Though, that still didn't mean Yuki no Kuni didn't have an actual ground beneath all of this snow. With Nadar, move. He immediately gave the orders as soon as the ground started to tremble. The area was filled with silence for about 2 seconds, before an eruption of lava came out of the ground where they were standing. The ice immediately melted under the powerful lava infused with chakra. Everyone had their eyes widened as instead of a mountain, it looked like an actual volcano spewing flames every now and then at random locations. He changed the landscape with one jutsu? What the actual hell? Even though with all the lava around, the cold snowy temperature would stop it in a few minutes. Still, it was a sight to see. And that surprise was going to cost them hard as they failed to notice three figures behind them. Twin swords crackling with lightning, and heavy bandaged sword coated in chakra, and two simple kunais directing towards the open spots that their chakra armor didn't cover. Back with Naruto. Naruto, who was now alone, still with his hands deep on the ground sustaining the jutsu to give his team the time they needed to surprise them. Though, he was sustaining it especially Mei, as a field with tons of lava would give her quite the advantage. The samurais and the princess had already backed away as this was shinobi matters that they shouldn't interfere. They would be a nuisance, in Naruto's opinion. His senses skyrocketed and his body moved in autopilot to the side, as something dropped where he was standing. With his Sharingan activated, he was able to see the object with some good amount of chakra in it. His eyes widened as he saw what it was and recognized. He immediately jumped backwards. Shit, Katsu, boom, with Mei and the others. As Mei, Ringo and Chojuro were about to strike, two figures moved in and clashed their own weapons with them, deflecting the two kunais sent by the former in process. Clang. Nadar and his two companions had their eyes widened as they saw who just saved them, a kanji for IWA embedded on their forehead. The former Kirigakure team showed why they were considered the specialists in swordsmen and immediately overpowered the newcomers, sending them backwards. Mei, who had thrown two kunais, analyzed the situation. Iwagakure, this was bad. She knew it. If Iwagakure is supporting dot. Boom. Mei widened her eyes in shock at the explosion far away. It was the location that made her react the way she did. Naruto. She couldn't dwell more on it, as both her students back flipped to her side, gazing at the newcomers. Iwagakure, what are you doing here? Rashi, acting as the leader, ignored the question as he shifted his attention to the Yukigakure shinobis. You should go complete your mission. Dodo is waiting for you. I'll handle this. Take Takashi. He's a censor and a good medic. He'll take you to her. Nadar grunted as he didn't like to be ordered around unless it was his boss. But he didn't complain as he knew the three people in front of him could become a problem. Though, with their experience being a little superior, it was a 50-50 situation. Sending a nod to his companions, they vanished from the area with Takashi following behind towards their mission. Now, where are you, princess? With Naruto. Naruto spit a gob of blood. His right arm got caught in the explosion, but was nothing too bad. He was already placing some bandages around it to stop the small bleeding. He was careless. His mind wasn't on the field today. It was the second time that they bypassed his senses, which is unheard of. He heard a loud laugh followed by an equal loud voice. Aha! Art is an explosion. That was too easy, hun. Naruto ignored the man that was still running about his awesomeness as his mind was racing and analyzing in detail the clay. Then, the explosion. Bakutan Kekiai Genkai. Deidara from Iwagakure. His blood started to pump. He detected two other newcomers where Mei and the rest was. He had to be fast here to help them as he could detect the gigantic amount of chakra coming from one of them. He placed his hand over the handle of his sword, gripping it tightly. Traces of flames started to materialize around the sword. Deidara was still laughing, but he wasn't a jounin for nothing, and he immediately detected a spike of chakra. His face contorted to a serious one as a black and orange blur almost decapitated him. Though, the dragon clay which he was flying on was caught, and as soon as the sword touched the clay, it got on fire. Whitish flames immediately melted the clay. Ryujin, Tenro Kaken. Deidara was astonished at such technique, and grace his opponent used the sword. He could almost call it an art itself. Almost. Both landed on the snowy ground. Deidara held a smirk on his lips as both of his hands were inside his two special clay pouches. He laughed at his enemy, who was analyzing him. Blue met red. The latter murmured something inaudible as the former taunted. What did you say? Well, whatever. That was a nice jutsu there with your little sword. But it's over, hun. Ninjio Kabaka Nindo. Deidara releases a glob of explosive clay from both his hands. Not noticing the air shifting, a cord of clay attached to it from his hands as the clay rises and molds itself into a human-like figure. Deidara smirks at his art before sending a mental command, and both creatures leaped towards Naruto at immense speed. Naruto was surprised at their speed, but with his Sharingan, he was easily able to dodge them and slice them with his sword. Though, the clay creature would just reform. Seeing he was close enough and without any hand seals, his chest puffed as steam started to come out of his mouth before spewing out some fire in the form of spiderwebs, and thanks to the close distance, it immediately caught them in it as the fire started to melt the clay second by second. Katon Benejigumo. He could actually form a large spider made of fire that would attack the enemy and catch him with its flammable webs, though he didn't need it as it requires a chunk of his chakra, even though he had more than enough. He didn't notice the smirk that came over Deidara's features. The close distance between his enemy and his clay was perfect. He made the ram hand seal. It's over. Katsu. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as with his Sharingan, he was able to detect the massive buildup on chakra inside of both creatures. His body didn't react in time because of the shock, as well as being caught off guard for a third time. A massive explosion rocketed the area. Boom. With Mei, Ringo, Chojuro, and Rashi. The battle has been going on for a few minutes now. Rashi had a vast amount of experience, but he couldn't get a hit in. Their teamwork was impeccable as they covered each other's blind spots. There was only one thing left to do as he heard a loud explosion far away. So Deidara is done already. Good. Mei, Ringo, and Chojuro had to halt as a massive spike of chakra was felt by them. A familiar feeling washed over them and fear as to what that meant. It can't be. Ruawar. The loud and demonic roar just confirmed their thoughts as their enemy's body was now enveloped in a thick dark red layer of chakra, three tails sprouting out of his back. The pressure around them became unbearable. This didn't bode well for them. Ringo and Chojuro were slightly winded after fighting with someone that could envelop himself in an armor made of lava. They needed something to tame this beast, or else they were going to die. Naruto. She was broken out of her thoughts as another spike of chakra alerted her and immediately paled. A compressed purplish-black ball materialized in front of the creature's mouth. Second by second it grew in size. Everyone was baffled at the amount of chakra they could feel rolling off of that technique. Rashi, who was now in the miniature form of his Biju, tilted his head forth and launched the large ball towards them. The icy ground beneath it vaporized immediately after being touched. Mei, Ringo, and Chojuro braced themselves for the impact. Disappear. Baijidama. In the previous chapter, Minato knew he had to do something else. It was not enough. Konoha needed a boost in power. He had to put the village first, and with an order that would bring many consequences in the future, he commanded to the four people in front of him. Jiraiya-sensei, Jounin Hataki Kakashi, Uzumaki Kushina, and Chunin Namikaze Menma. You are to meet Shibuki, the current leader of Takigakure. Give him this scroll and wait for his response. If he accepts, very well. But, if he refuses, you are to infiltrate the village and kidnap Fu and bring her back to Konoha safely. XXXXXXXXXXXX. She was broken out of her thoughts as another spike of chakra alerted her and immediately paled. A compressed purplish-black ball materialized in front of the creature's mouth. Second by second it grew in size. Everyone was baffled at the amount of chakra they could feel rolling off of that technique. Rashi, who was now in the miniature form of his Biju, tilted his head forth and launched the large ball towards them. The icy ground beneath it vaporized immediately after being touched. Mei, Ringo, and Chojuro braced themselves for the impact. Disappear. Baijidama. Uchiha Naruto. The Firestorm. Chapter 7. Beast vs. Monster. Takigakure no Sato. Uzumaki Kushina was a very emotional woman. Everyone that got to know her could confirm this statement without any hesitation whatsoever. As any other person, she lived by her own motto. Family always comes first. She had tried to drive this same motto into his son's mind, but the fact that she spent the majority of Minma's life in retirement, her words were in vain, and so, he started to look up to his father as he was the Hokage and a powerful man, feared by many. As soon as he joined the academy and heard about the accomplishments during his shinobi's career, her own accomplishments were like simple autographs. Few years later, and they are discarded and forgotten. Obviously, Minato cherished his family, but as soon as he was announced the Yondaime Hokage, it was like the importance of the family passed to second plan and the priority was, after then, the fucking village. She was an Uzumaki through and through, and what they were about to do right now was something that went against everything her ancestors fought for. Kushina just couldn't find the reason for this action. Konoha had the strongest Biju, and arguably the strongest and fastest shinobi alive. They had, possibly, 8 or 9 S ranks in the village. So why? Even with the invasion during the chunin exams, Konohagakure was still the strongest out of all the 5 great nations, thanks to the help from the other countries, but still. The economic backlash and the tensions between the villages resulted in this bold action that was frowned upon, and even she knew, though she was not one for politics, this move was going to cause a lot of trouble to Konoha. All of that because of one boy, Uchiha Naruto. Again, she didn't know why everyone felt that he was a threat. Indeed, he had a tremendous potential and insane talent, but a simple, and cute she might add, boy can't be the sole reason for the so-called mighty 5 great nations starting to kidnap, torture, and kill people left and right. During the month that she used to train the boy, she came to know him very well, and, she dare to say, deeply. Naruto, in her opinion, was more of an Uzumaki than her own son. I love my village, and even though my supposed Uchiha family side is here in Konoha, my mother and the few bonds that I made in Kirigakure are what really makes me strive to be the greatest. I wouldn't trade them for nothing, and I would burn anyone or anything, even my own village, if someone dares to lay a finger on them. The words of the handsome Uchiha rung in her head. This was an answer she expected from a fellow Uzumaki, not at all from an Uchiha, proving that the Terumi's blood was running strongly in his veins as well. It was one of the reasons she had started to open up with him, and this led to a surprising and pleasant romantic event between them that was going to be kept secret until their deaths. Shaking her head out of those thoughts, otherwise her face would turn into a tomato, she locked her emotionless eyes on their mission. A girl, who was probably her son's age, who was walking towards her small home in the forest, a few miles away from the main town of Takigakure. Fu, her name if she was not wrong, was like indirect family. They, unknowingly, already shared a bond of being both a Jinchuriki of their respective bijus, and that's why it was so difficult to her. It was like betraying family, even if it's not by blood. What had driven her mad was the fact that Minato had saved her from a similar event, and now here she was, doing the same exact thing that some power-hungry people tried to do to her, and the same man that gave her this mission was the person that had saved her and had bluntly said that the world would be better off without these greedy scums. Kushina steeled her gaze as she saw her son closing on the Nanabai's Jinchuriki. Shibuki had plainly refused to give away her adopted little sister. Even in the presence of 3 S-ranked shinobis plus the Yandame's son, if it comes to his little Fu, he wasn't afraid of anyone. And so as not to make him suspicious, they spoke about some deals, open AA trade route in their borders and few other things. At the end of the conversation, Shibuki had his recently formed ANBU escort everyone but Jiraiya to the secret entrance/exit. Though, as soon as they got near the exit, Kakashi had put them in a strong Jinjutsu with his Sharingan, and even if he was not an Uchiha by blood, what he did would by the time they needed to execute the plan, and the ANBU wouldn't suspect a thing while Jiraiya would be informing the Takigakure's leader about the incoming war. As soon as news of the kidnapping had gotten out, Jiraiya would be helping them on trying to find the kidnappers as to diverge the attentions from Konoha. With Menma, the recently promoted chunin was actually nervous as he knew he was playing the most dangerous role in the mission, seducing the Jinchuriki. Outwardly, it was going to be easy due to the reports they had about the Jinchuriki's treatment. The desire she had for someone, apart from her brother, to acknowledge her was far too great to simply pass up, and so, they would use it to their advantage. Thus, Menma Namikaze. Hello. A cheerful voice broke Fu out of her depression of another day of trying and failing to befriend someone. As she turned around, Orange met crystal blue eyes for a second, and the former immediately blushed at the young man in front of her. Hi. Inwardly, Menma smirked as it seems the looks he got from his father's side worked on the mint green-haired girl. And so, his mission was about to finally start. 30 minutes later, if someone was watching from afar, well, except from Kakashi and Kushina, that person would instantly smile at the what seemed to be a rare young couple, talking and laughing about many things. Menma had to suppress his devious smirk many times during the whole conversation. The mission was going perfectly well. It helped that the Nanabai's Jinchuriki seemed to like him. It didn't come as a surprise when she told him about her dreams. She wished to see the world with her own eyes, befriend few people, and finally settle down. The fact that she was talking to a foreigner boy, and he was not just charming, but a very cheerful person was a bonus. Fu had her suspicions at the beginning, but as soon as she saw the Konoha's high-tide, she had immediately shook those thoughts as the last time she met a squad from the same village. They were, in her opinion, nice people. After they cover most of the topics that came into their heads, Minma finally decided that his companion had her guard down. He knew fully well that Fu shared similarities with the Aburame clan. The insects all around the forest would contact her in case of danger, and that's why his mission was to get to know her, show her that he was really interested in her. Minma had observed her while she was touching some random flowers or just sharing some of her dreams and noticed that even if she was smiling, she was tense like expecting something. But now, she could see how relaxed she was, and thus, she didn't notice a red blur planting a piece of paper with many small seals inscribed on it, a kanji for surpress embedded on it, on the back of her head, and a red 3, Tomo D, I spinning widely until it was too late. And, no, Kakashi isn't controlling her nor the Biju. That's way out of his league. Kushina suppressed Nanabai's chakra or basically cut the connection between them, and Kakashi put her to sleep in a jinjutsu. Without the access to her Biju, she was vulnerable to some strong jinjutsu. Infiltrating missions are not flashy, sorry. Minma released a sigh of relief, seeing the emotionless body of what was once a jovial girl that was now peacefully sleeping. A hand started to ruffle his unruly hair as the voice of its owner broke him out of his thoughts. Mama, the mission is not finished yet. We still have the whole trip back to Konoha. The Uzumaki Namake's boy's sweat dropped at the eye smile his sensei was giving him and the lazy tone in his words. With a nod, the three of them vanished in a blur of speed, their objective complete, and now sleeping on Kakashi's back. No one noticed the sorrowful look on Kushina's face as, involuntarily, a single tear fell from one of her eyes. I'm sorry, Yuki no Kuni. Disappear? Baijidama. A large purplish-black ball was thrusted towards Mei, Ringo, and Chojuro. The three of them were still baffled at the sudden turn of events. The former was the first to break out of her stupor, and her mind instantly came to a single decision. They have to live. She took a step forward as the ball of pure chakra was halfway through, destroying everything in its path. Get out of here. The emotions running on those 4 words were not lost on both of her students who had their eyes widened, but before Mei could gather any chakra or start with the hand seals for her most powerful technique, a voice rang through the clearing. Uchiha Kenjin. As soon as those words left the person's lips, a red cylindrical barrier enveloped the 3 Kirigakure shinobis before a huge explosion followed by a massive earthquake was felt by everyone miles away. Rashi, who was still in control, released a rather heavy breath after using such straining jutsu, though he had a grin present on his now demonic face while he waited to see the results of his handiwork. But that grin disappeared, replaced by a baffled expression as he saw a weird flame-like barrier that somehow had withstood his most powerful attack in this form. Impossible. No one has ever lived after that. I've got no choice. The barrier dispersed as a small pillar of flames rose from the former snowy ground in front of the trio, before disappearing, and a black-armored boy with his arms folded over his chest and an unreadable expression on his face appeared. Interesting. I'll take care of it. It will be all over soon enough. Don't interfere. The trio couldn't help but sigh in relief. Their bodies were still trembling from experiencing a certain death situation. Mei, again, was the first to be able to speak. Are you sure you can take on this monster? Also, what happened to Deidara? That nuisance is probably blowing himself up, right? About now dash. Boom. Everyone, except Naruto, though his face held some surprise, had their eyes widened in shock at the earth-shattering explosion felt miles away from them. Flashback. Both landed on the snowy ground. Deidara held a smirk on his lips as both of his hands were inside his 2 special clay pouches. He laughed at his enemy, who was analyzing him. Blue met red. The latter murmured something inaudible as the former taunted. What did you say? Well, whatever. That was a nice jutsu there with your little sword. But it's over, hun. Ninjio Kabaka Nindo. Deidara released a glob of explosive clay from both his hands. Not noticing the air shifting, a cord of clay attached to it from his hands as the clay rises and molds itself into a human-like figure. Deidara smirks at his art before sending a mental command, and both creatures leaped towards Naruto at immense speed. Flashback end. Jinjutsu is not even my strongest field, though he still couldn't see through my Mugen no Jinso, endless illusion. An illusion that whoever is caught thinks that the fight is going his way no matter what, but the real point of it is after a while. It affects directly the mind of my opponent. His confidence is boosted to unimaginable levels that he is indeed winning the battle, in case he doesn't dispel the Jinjutsu, immersing himself in an endless battle. Everyone shivered at the thought. If a person didn't disperse that particular Jinjutsu right away, they would be practically and unknowingly at their enemy's mercy, while under an illusion supposedly fighting a never-ending battle. Well, this Jinjutsu is specifically for arrogant people or those who are too proud of their abilities to notice the slight shifting of their surroundings in that split of a second, the latter being Deidara's case. A decent shinobi would notice probably right away. Mei and her students blinked at the description, but they had other things to worry about as a demonic voice followed by a massive spike of chakra and an explosion snapped them out of their shock. Enough! Naruto's blood pumped in excitement as the beast in front of him flexed his arms like testing the newfound strength. Although he wanted to protect the bijus, his Uchiha's blood compelled him at least to fight one of them as he closed his eyes. And he was going to follow that instinct just once. Drip, drip, Mei, Ringo and Chojuro jumped out of the battlefield as soon as they felt Naruto's chakra rising through the roof. The now huge monkey stopped whatever he was doing, and his attention was solely focused on the runt, whose chakra matched almost his own. Drip, drip, blood splashing on the ground beneath Naruto was heard. Mei was worried for her student, but as soon as he opened once again his eyes, she gasped at the new and strange pattern on his Sharingan. Blood leaking out of his right eye. Amaterasu. Black flames exploded out of his right eye. It didn't take long to reach the Yanbi, whose eyes widened in shock as his body was engulfed in the same flames. It was inconceivable that his body could be burned, him who was so famous for his mastery over Yotan. But here he was, roaring to the skies as the wave of flames tried to engulf his entire body. Hell no. The monkey's body glowed bright red as the earth beneath him shook because of the pressure and release of a Biju's chakra. Lava shot out of his pores before his being was covered in a lava-like armor. Another earth-shattering roar, and he let loose his own flames that were about to be, surprisingly, overcome by the black flames around the battlefield. Yogen no Shutsujin, lava emergence. Naruto released a few breaths, cleaning some of the blood on his cheek. Two clones materialized out of thin air on both of his sides before they lunged forward, knowing the plan. The original was already finishing his sequence of hand seals before he smashed his black, gloved hands on the now scorched ground. Doton, Daikidakaku. The earth around Yanbi trembled a bit as he saw two copies of the runt running towards him, but before he could wipe them out, the ground beneath him, literally, lowered itself, thus creating a giant hole. The sudden rude movement of the terrain made him lose his composure as the clones were already above him. Hand seals finished. Enten, Karyu Enden. One of the clones let loose a stream of black flames from his mouth that soon took shape of a dragon head, as the other clone clapped his palms. Futon, Kamikaze. The clone breathed a massive gust of wind out of his mouth as it converged with the black flames, intensifying its power. The sheer size and heat of the black dragon-headed flames actually made the Biju hesitate for a second. Shikutten, Raiwarashi no Ikari, Scorch Release, Dragon Tempest's Wrath. The combined technique got closer to the massive monkey, who grunted in discomfort before grunting as lava started to leak out of his mouth's cavity. It didn't take long for him to let loose a massive wave of an intense lava which collided with the black flames. Yoganyase no Kiryu, Molten Rock Wild Torrent. To the Biju's surprise, the freaking black flames withstood his own technique, though only for a while. Though, he had to force more chakra into his own jutsu to break the evenly matched flames. Flexing his legs a bit, the ground beneath him shook at the pressure of said little movement before the gigantic monkey leapt out of the hole. Both of his massive hands glowed. Molten rock engulfed said hands a second later as he was still in the air, but now descending upon Naruto. The beast shifted his body to put all the way upon the next attack, as he roared to the skies while thrusting his fists on the runt. Yogen Tsuchi no Saiken, Molten Rock Earth-Shattering Fist. Naruto's Mangekyo Sharingan started to spinning widely and fast. A gigantic black humanoid pure of chakra covered his entirety as Yanbi started to close on him. The ethereal being that surrounded Naruto brought its muscled arms forward to intercept the Biju's direct attack. Tengu-like armor split from its forehead down, revealing glowing, yellow, menacing eyes looking towards the beast while obscuring the rest of its face. Foolish monkey. Susanoo. Meanwhile, Amigakure no Sato. Pakura was strolling around her village, enjoying the hour break of its weather. Currently, the skies were clear, no rain nor the usual dark clouds. After reporting the accomplishment of her mission, Hanzo had her dismissed. She noticed the dark, rigid tone in his voice when he told her to leave. Who wouldn't? After all, a daughter's death plus the reports of small skirmishes in Ames' borders would make anyone snap. It was like karma was upon him. She had reported the killer of her daughter. The darkened eyes was not lost by her, and inwardly, she was worried for her handsome friend. She knew he was strong if the few battles they had were any indication. But Hanzo is, without any doubts, a living legend. A voice behind her snapped out of her thoughts. Though, a scowl instantly formed on her face seeing the boy that was trying to make her join his little group since she joined Amigakure's ranks. Hello, Pakura-chan. Chan. Her icy, pupilless brown eyes bored into the boy's soul. His spiky, orange hair was the only thing that moved as his whole body froze under the woman's gaze. Yahiko-san, what do you want? The emotionless tone broke him out of his state. His expression shifted into a serious one as he regarded the woman he loved in front of him. Are you sure you don't want to join Akatsuki? Together, we can bring peace to the world. We both would be unstoppable and could easily eliminate any threats that would come our way. For example, the oh-so-famous Uchiha Naruto should be eradicated. The Uchiha's blood is tainted. We all know the greed for power that they possess. Eventually, he will snap dash. If Yahiko was looking towards Pakura at that moment, he wouldn't miss the slight narrowed eyes as her mind started to work in overdrive. She had to notify Naruto about Aim's hatred towards him. It was just not Hanzo, but now Yahiko and his group. Although the orange-haired was strong, she was miles away from him, and against Naruto, he wouldn't have a chance, but with numbers and a certain cunning, everyone was vulnerable, even the likes of Senju Hashirama. We are only missing 2 members now, in our group. As soon as we get acquainted with each other, we'll be starting to take missions, and with all these tensions between the so-called great nations dash. The venom in the tone on how he phrased great nations was not lost by her. They will be letting their guard down against the smaller countries as usual. And that's when we will be striking. Amigakure will not be their little playground again. This, I swear to you. Pakura knew he was trying to coerce her to join Akatsuki. She knew that the boy was in love with her, but her heart was already taken, even if she didn't know or admit. Though, hi. I accept. Now stop bothering me. Yahiko immediately stopped on his track. He didn't even notice Pakura leaving the clear in a simple shunshin, as a huge grin threatened to split his face. Finally, my love has reached you, hihi. I knew you couldn't resist me. Yahiko knew Pakura was a very strong kunoichi, way stronger than Konin, and someone that could give even Hanzo a run for his money. That was one of the reasons his crush for Kanan was easily squashed for the former Sunigakure Jounin. Her beauty also was something that few could rival. At least, now, she finally accepted his offer. Now, the Akatsuki's leader could show her that he indeed deserved her love. Now, she would see his strength, and, together, they would bring peace. After destroying the 5 great nations' ego and pride, somewhere in Yuki no Kuni, scared shitless. That was how Koyuki was feeling right now. They had ran a far distance away from what was now a battlefield. Sometimes they could feel the snowy ground beneath them shaking for a few seconds. Whatever was happening out there, it was way out of their league. Even if they were just civilians, many of them were veteran samurais with a good physical condition, and so, they were able to move the princess way faster than normal. But, right now, somehow the unknown ninjas that attacked before had caught up to them. They were a bit roughed up, but even then,